I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Commissioners to, and now we know it's being recorded. Please take a moment, if you have your cell phone with you, to silence it so we aren't interrupted during our proceedings. And if you wish to speak this morning, please add your name to the sign up at the back of the room. For those of you that are representing AFSCME, I do have the list, so I've got that covered. And for online attendees who'd like to comment, please announce yourself during introductions and indicate you wish to provide comments. If you're presenting to the board today at the table, the microphones on the table are active when the red light at the top is on. You need to push the button on the stand in order to turn the microphone on. And please position the microphone close to you because that way we get the best sound quality. With that, we are going to go ahead with introductions. I'm Zan Augereau, board chair.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Vance Carney, County Council.
Rick Krager, Assistant County Administrator.
And we also usually do introductions in the room, just to know who's in the room. So I'm going to start over here with Brigitte Olson.
Olson, City of Corvallis Housing.
April Holland, Health Department.
Tim O'Sullivan, Fleet Department. Lou Wallen, Fleet Department.
Jenny Anfield, Finance.
Debbie Sessions, Finance.
Julie Clymer, Health Department. Kim Harmon, AFSCME. Dawn Dale, AFSCME President, and I work for the Sheriff's Office. Michelle Bangs, AFSCME Vice President, and I work for Behavioral Health.
Nicole Walgamont, Behavioral Services.
Samantha Bailey, she, her pronouns, Health Department, and AFSCME member.
Ian Hammond, Engineering Survey, and AFSCME.
Sara Siddiqui, she, her pronouns, Health Equity Coordinator, AFSCME Marketing.
Haley Olson, she, they pronouns, Health Department, and AFSCME Trustee.
Chase Steingas, she, her, Environmental Project Coordinator, Public Works.
David Malone, Engineering and Survey, AFSCME Board Member.
Cody Bindrum, Fleet Department.
Kurt Cleveland, Benton County resident.
Patty Cleveland, same.
David Shreve, Fleet Department.
Chris McFarland, Executive Board Member and Benton County Behavioral Health.
Gabby Dibble, AFSCME Recorder, and Benton County Finance.
Joseph Moore, Chief Stewart, Fast 264.
McGuire, Fleet Department. Emilia Santino, AFSCME Treasurer, and I work at the Sheriff's Office.
William Nelson, Fleet Department.
Cody McGuire, Fleet Department.
Rolando Figueroa, AFSCME.
Jen Brown, Sustainability. Good morning, Sarah Hartstein, she, her, Health Department.
Good morning, buenos dias, Rocio Munoz, she, her, ella pronouns, and Health Department as well.
John Water, PSC.
Ryan Levesque, PSC Office.
Corey Grogan, Benton County Public Information.
Online.
Good morning, Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Ken Eklund, North Benton County resident and chair of the Disposal Site Advisory Committee.
Good morning, Jamie Olson, Benton County Juvenile Department.
Diana Baginski from the Health Department.
Kristen Hawley from the Benton County Juvenile Department.
George Walbusser, Benton County resident.
Bailey Payne, Solid Waste Program Coordinator.
Summer Smallwood, Katie Bateman from Benton County Parole and Probation, AFSCME members.
Vincent Drew, Community Services Consortium, and Lynn Bitten, Food Chair. I'm also AFSCME President for Local 3563.
Robert Baker, Environmental Health. Sorry. Robert Baker, Environmental Health, I'm a trustee.
Doug Syra, BCDSA Vice President.
Christopher Dale, BCDSA President.
Jeff Franklin, the Health Department employee.
Morgan Driggs, Community Development.
Phillips from
Thank
the
you.
Patman Institute for Energy and Resource Management.
Ray Wuth Taquabity, Benton County Safety Officer.
Chelsea
James
Chipman,
Wright.
Benton County Sheriff's Office and AFSCME member.
James Wright,
Ros-
Community Development.
Rocio Zavala Buendia, Health Department, Health Navigator.
Leanna Buck, Fairgrounds and AFSCME member.
Lindsay Goodman, Finance and Board of Commissioners.
Petra Sheets, Community Development.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Much appreciated. And if we did miss you for some reason, please put your name in the chat and we will let us know that you were here.
Yep, I was just going to say there's several members who have said they don't have microphones, but their names are in the chat. And then I wonder, do we have any more chairs? Because I see people standing and I hate to make people stand if we have more chairs back there. No more chairs? Okay. Sorry, everybody.
There are a couple of empty spaces up here in the front if people would like to sit. Okay. Are there any changes to or additions to the agenda today? Okay, hearing none, the agenda will be considered approved. And we are going to move into our special report this morning, welcoming Brigida Olson from Corvallis Housing Office. And she has vacated a seat in the front row for anyone who wishes to sit. Yes. Oh.
Thank you for having me. I'm Brigida Olson, the Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager at the City of Corvallis. I've been with the city for almost, 3.5 years or so. Prior to that, I worked in the Community Development Corporation for about 18 years or so. So been thinking about home for a really long time. Gonna just talk a little bit about national trends. So we're not alone in the housing crisis. Our housing supply is limited in Corvallis and also in the nation. I'm not gonna read through all the nuances because you folks have a busy agenda. Mortgage rates are beginning to come down, which is welcome because that gives a little bit more buying power. Again, we don't have the housing supply that's needed. And investor homeownership has risen by 10% from 2010 to, investor homeownership rate has risen 10% in 2010 to 20% now. And that's probably dated by a year ago. Yuki. The homeownership rates or housing prices continue to rise.
Could I ask
Anything I
that
should do?
anyone online, please mute your mic? We're getting a little bit of feedback in the room.
There's a big imbalance. Housing prices continue to go up. We need a supply. We need more supply in Corvallis. We need more supply nationally. And we've been working on addressing a lot of that in public policies in recent years at the city. We've underbuilt in Oregon by 140,000 units. So more than half of those need to be affordable. The state needs to produce almost 500,000 homes in the next 20 years to keep up pace with demand. And then the governor has asked that we approximately 36,000 homes need annually for the next 10 years. So there's an executive order in which the governor really has strategic, long-term aspirational goals of increasing our supply in the state. And then for the past 6 years, the number of people experiencing homelessness has increased by 63%. This is extremely low-income renter households in Oregon. So as you can see on the pie graph, 33% of extremely low-income renter households are in the workforce. So they're earning 30% area median income or less. Some are disabled, some are in school, single caregiver. And then the other graph there, or table, shows housing cost burden by income group. So when you have less income, you're going to have more burden on rents and or home ownership. So when you're extremely low income, earning 30% area median income or less, you're going to have more cost burden. And then as you get middle income, so that's 80 or 100% area median income, there's less cost burden associated with your housing. Regrettably, we're still and continue to be the #1 rent burden community in Oregon. That means that folks are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And approximately 39% of renting households are severely rent burdened. So they're spending more than 50% of their income on housing. That means that folks are having to make hard choices, right? Putting food on the table, paying for medicine, going and paying for childcare, etc. This is executive order in which we are working on increasing our supply of housing and what that means for the city of Corvallis. Roughly, we need to be producing 500 units of housing annually. We're not there yet. There's another graph that will show our numbers for production in the past year. Having said that, we're not producers. The city of Corvallis does not develop housing, either market rate or affordable. We work in partnership with affordable developers to increase affordable supply. Annexation. For a long time, the folks in the city of Corvallis had to vote to approve annexations in the city that restricted housing and housing supply. So if you look back in the 80s, we had quite a few new acres coming into the city limits, etc. And then we had voter approved annexations, which made it pretty challenging for new housing developments to come online. You had to risk, if you're a developer, risk being able to know that everybody in Corvallis would vote yes for annexation, etc. More recently, we have increased, it goes to city council instead of to the voters. And so we've increased some acres, over 164 so for the past couple of years or so, with more to come. New residential units, as I said, sort of the governor, we're being asked to be able to increase our supply by about 500 units of new housing annually. We're not there, 274 last year, so in 2023, and that's for duplexes, multifamily units, and single family was just 66. We've done a lot of work. I would say city council for decades restricted housing and housing supply in our city. And so that made it really challenging to, from a supply standpoint, prices have only gone up and vacancies have only gone down. So we hover around 1% to 2% vacancy rate in our community, which means that prices, folks can't find a home. We've done a lot of public policy and code changes and amendments in deleting some pages of our complex land development code, over 300, really trying to make it more streamlined for developers to be able to build housing in our community. We've also added more tools that I'll talk about shortly. In my 20-year career of affordable housing, we're seeing the highest number of new units being built right now. So that's something to celebrate. It's not enough by any means, but it's a good start. So we're going to have over 400 units of new affordable development. There are different phases of the development process right now. So if you see the 100 units there, Country Club and 53rd, that's 53rd Flats. There is, great, I'm shorter. So 53rd Flats just recently completed. So folks are moving in, and I think there's still a couple vacant units there. That's affordable. So folks have to earn at or below 60% area median income, and it's multifamily, meaning rentals. The one down at the way bottom is 84 units, and that's River Green Landing, and that is under development also. But that they're not taking or they're just beginning to take applications. On my page, one of the pages I'll show where folks can sign up. So it's not quite yet done, but folks will be moving in hopefully later this year. 174 units, Wake Robin and 3rd, so that's in Southtown, taking applications now, and that is a large development of affordable units. So I know that families recently moved in. We are working on phased occupancy, so as buildings get completed, we're able to work with the developer so that folks can move in and then they can complete the other buildings along the way because of the housing crisis. And then last but not least, 47 units of permanent supportive housing that's being developed by Corvallis Housing First. Construction will be underway in the near future. And I believe late 25 or early 26 will be ready for folks. And that's permanent supportive housing means that folks have will be earning 30% area median income, so very low income, and folks who need extra support. So they'll have case management supports on hand to help stabilize folks and make a permanent home. This is really small, so apologies, but this is development of housing is really complex, and then you add the complexity of affordable housing and the different layers of financing that's necessary. It takes years, unfortunately. So these are all the different developments that I just talked about, or properties, and they're different sources of funding, and along with the total cost. So the city of Corvallis has some financing tools that we put into almost all of these developments, and what they do is they help leverage state and federal resources. So we try to get our money in first with a construction excess tax or other federal resources that we might have, such as home or community development block grant. Folks can then leverage those resources with the state for low-income housing tax credits, additional gap financing, etc. That's a picture of the Union at Pacific, which is Wake Robin and 3rd. And again, folks have recently moved in, and that is a plan for the permanent supportive housing, 3rd Street Commons on 3rd and the former Budget Inn. This is how we compare. This is a little outdated, so I need to update this, but this is how we compare to other cities in our region as far as the development of new affordable housing or with financing tied that's restricted. So most of this funding that at least that we have is 60 years affordability. Folks will be income restricted, meaning anybody who moves in will have to earn at or below whatever agreement we've had with the developer. Usually it's 60% area median income. And then at new lease up, the same is true. We have Housing Toolbox, as many tools as possible. You folks helped pass some recent property tax exemptions in a year or two ago to help incentivize future development, which is appreciated. So this is the regulatory where we've, the city has adopted, we have a lot of state mandates, so we've adopted a lot of state mandates, and then also working on higher density properties, ADUs, cottage clusters, and then the financial component. So the construction excess tax, which we leverage with state and federal resources, the low income rental property tax exemption, multiple unit property tax exemption, which is for middle in housing too. So it's not just affordable development agreements. And then in 2019, voters approved an urban renewal for South Corvallis. And so that resource is slowly growing and will be able to help with future development of housing. We have a housing dashboard. I try to, it's recently updated, so it gives you a lot of the data associated with what's happening in our community and how we're doing. And questions?
Well, it's really exciting to see that we are on an upswing in terms of housing development, particularly in that affordable housing range. I know that we need more housing at all income level brackets at this point in time. I was wondering whether the new tax incentive programs, the LRPT and MUPT, have attracted any additional developers at this time.
I know of our economic development office, so Christopher Jacobs, it handles the MUPT exemption now, and I believe there's a couple folks who have not submitted applications yet. And then LRPT, no, not yet. But I am very thoughtful and thinking about the future, right? So have those affordable units there, but I'm also talking to other developments about future affordable properties throughout the city too. So you always want to keep your pipeline moving. And again, we need to be addressing the housing continuum from not only affordable housing and houselessness to get into shelter, to get into affordable housing, but also, back in the day when folks could afford home ownership, and a starter home and first-time home ownership is really important to build wealth over time.
And your primary role is that liaison role with the development community to bring people in?
That's one of my hats. Yes. Yeah. We have the financial tools within the housing division. The planners work on the regulatory aspects to update code and what we see from the state with a lot of state mandates. And then I'm working in partnership with a lot of folks within the health department to address houselessness and the coordinated homeless response office. So a lot of work to be done.
Well, I really appreciate the partnership with the city, and I like the dashboard. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the presentation. Depending on how you do the math, Corvallis is 1/3 of Benton County, and then OSU is separate, and then the rest of the county. Do you have any notion where we could get information on what's going on outside of Corvallis? I mean, you have wonderful charts and graphs, but kind of in the boundaries of the city. So can you suggest any place to get information on what's going on in the rest of the county?
Oregon Housing Community Services has great dashboards that provide information about production and demographic information. I also am happy to be a liaison with any of the other neighboring cities in our community, and have reached out to some city managers in the past to say if there's ways that I can help work in partnership from affordable units, happy to do so, etc. So,
well, thank you, and congratulations on getting an upturn in the housing, much needed housing supply.
it's so many organizations and so much public policy and so much hard work by our partners. And it's exciting to be a houser at this time, to finally see financial resources at the state, along with little bit of resources we have the city that can help promote and really, hopefully this is the beginning. I want to be able to help folks transition from rentals to home ownership again, etc.
Any further questions or comments? Sure.
Thanks, Brigida. One question I was going to ask in terms of the capacity, affordable housing developers obviously have a lot of new units. Are you seeing an uptick in new developers coming to the community to develop? Is that something that has increased over time? And then second to that is, what do you see as the biggest challenges for those developers in coming in, and how are we addressing those?
Back in the day, community development corporations we had in the 1990s, and it was like a sole organization that really did a development within a community, and that's changed a lot in recent years, partly because there's state resources that I haven't seen in my lifetime. I'm working with probably 5 different developers from both local to also national firms. And I often get calls from now national firms. We're on the map in the state. The folks, I think it was for Union at Pacific, where 42% of the units are already leased up, which is unheard of because they're not done yet, right? And so I was talking to the developer who's national. I was like, what is happening? And I'm like, right, we're in a housing crisis. So I work with the whole gamut of development teams from Oregon to national, et cetera. And then our tools are helpful, but it takes a while, right? And so, affordable development is complex, and it takes a long time to get through the financing and making sure that we can get through the development process.
And do you see a lot of new opportunities with, the Housing has the LIFT program. I think I saw you had a funding source from that. But do you see more opportunities that could be coming from all the resources that are going into housing?
I see more opportunities. I would say the developers sometimes are wanting to go quickly in a thoughtful way, but being able to get as few tools, but enough tools to be able to make it pencil and be able to start building. And so I've been surprised at how quickly some of these units have been able to be built from the beginning to the end, where sometimes it could take 6 years, quite honestly. But some of the firms that we're working with are able to produce more quite quickly because they also have replicated this across the state or nation.
And then I guess I'll just respond real quickly to Commissioner Malone's question in relation to outside the city. I think, as all 3 of you know, we've been working a lot with the Planning Commission in terms of housing, and specifically, looking from a regional standpoint, but where we see obviously opportunities is in data and information. I think you all know that we're working on the comprehensive plan update, and that includes part of the goal 10 housing component. So to answer your question, Commissioner Malone, this is something that we want to continue to work on and being able to supply more information for those outlying communities, but also working in partnership with Brigida and Corvallis to leverage their resources and their knowledge as well. So I just wanted to let all three of you know that that is certainly something that is on our radar and will continue to work. And then Oregon State is also involved in that discussion as well.
Thank you. That's an appreciated update about the Housing Subcommittee of the Planning Commission. Looking forward to seeing the products of their work as well. Okay. Thank you very much, Brigida. Really appreciate it. Next, we're heading into public comment. Do I have a list of public comment beyond the Ask Me folks as well? Okay. 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 And Ken, I'm going to weave you in. I'm going to take kind of an intermission in the Ask Me comments and just weave you into the flow. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge Don Dale's role in putting this series of comments together and bringing you all together here today. And we're going to start with Nikki Marr because she has to get going quickly and want to make sure that she gets finished in time. So 3 minutes a person, and we'll begin virtually if Nikki is ready. Okay, we can't hear you. No. Okay, I think that's a good plan. So we'll start with the first group, and then Nikki will follow. First up are Don Dale, Michelle Bangs, and Joe Moore.
Good morning, Commissioners, Assistant County Administrator, and Legal. My name is Dawn Dale. I'm the president for Ask Me Local 2064. I've been part of the executive board for almost 8 years and have worked for Benton County for 13 years. I work at the Sheriff's Office as a business analyst too. I do want to make one quick comment that this contract is very important to a lot of folks. As you can see, the room is filled and we have 120 people online. I want to thank you for allowing Ask Me Local 2064 employees to talk with you today. The bargaining team over the past year have heard the heartfelt struggles and challenges of many of the members as we have prepared bargaining for our next contract. We represent approximately 334 members who are employed with Benton County. These are the employees that citizens who pay taxes work with every day. As we go into the next segment of bargaining, mediation, there are still a lot of items not resolved. We have bargained in good faith for 150 days with very little movement since March 14th when we had our last tentative agreement. Since then, we have continued to be at a stalemate on many of the items in the economic package and the safety language article. It is for this reason that I make the following request. As the Board of Commissioners, you may not have the power to enforce and implement on many of the details, but you do have the authority to authorize additional funding to help us come closer to a contract that will allow our membership to vote for and ratify, which includes taking reserves below policy if the need is justified. There have been multiple Tuesday Board of Commissioner meetings that I have attended where the HR director has spoke to you about the compensation philosophy. where she uses words like high quality, fair, transparent, competitive compensation. On the careers page on the website, it states our goal is to attract top talent by offering competitive pay and benefits. We provide fair, equitable, and sustainable compensation, benefits, and retirement plans. Lastly, the human resource mission states that we want to become the employer of choice. How can all of these things be true when we continue to still struggle asking for a fair compensation package? We have asked that it mirrors the compensation package given to the non-represented based on the same concept and theory. This is for AFSCME employees who are doing same or similar jobs as non-represented. They should receive the same pay. The issue on their proposals compared to ours still show our C-band on average are paid $12,000 less annually, basically showing a misalignment of 18%. This difference has been compiling since 2015-16, when at that time both non-representative and AFSCME salary schedules were the same. That analysis was completed and shared at the bargaining table and sent to each of you on July 19th, if you could reference that for more of the details. There is so much more to say, but I'd like to leave you with one additional thought. It is time that we recognize employees who have worked for the county 10+ years by giving them retention pay. Benton County has been a revolving door where employees gain experience and knowledge, then move on to better wages, benefits, and work conditions with different employers. Longevity retention pay is considered a norm and is awarded to employees in many other counties such as Josephine, Polk, Tillamook, Umatilla, Yamhill, Lynn, and Hood River.
I'm going to have to cut you off. You're a minute over now. Thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you for that great introduction, and we'll move on.
Good morning, commissioners, administrators, employees, and Benton County taxpayers. Some may know who I am, however, most don't. I'm Michelle Banks, and I'm the lead housing coordinator for Benton County's behavioral health and AFSCME's Local 2064 vice president. I've worked for Benton County for 10 years, and I started as a part-time employee making $11.75 an hour. And now I'm capped out, including my 5% wage increase for my lead work. I've been capped out for 2 years and will only get COLA increases for the extremely hard and public-facing work I do with the homeless and community landlords. In these last 10 years, I've witnessed amazing things happen and not so amazing things happen with our county and our AFSCME family. I am here to let you know we as a county need to provide better for our employees, and how we do this is through fair contract negotiations. I was part of the bargaining team until I needed to take 12 weeks off for cancer treatment. I saw how management treated those who are represented as less than. Our AFSCME members are the majority of Benton County's workforce, and we want to be the best at what we do and show our citizens how committed we are to serve them. While on medical leave for my cancer treatment in February, I was under the impression that I could use donated leave to cover what income I did not receive from Paid Leave Oregon. Paid Leave Oregon pays about 60% of your wage. I needed to take time off to save my life, and then found out that I was not able to request donated time to make up that 30% loss. I was told many things by HR, including utilizing donated leave was unlawful if added to paid leave, and I was told we cannot do that by those above me. So I didn't choose to take paid leave. I could get donated, or I did choose to take paid leave. I could get donated leave and hope that someone donates while I care for my family as I'm fighting for my life. I chose paid leave as it was guaranteed income. I had to wait 1 month before getting paid out and received penny checks from the county until I returned to work. While recovering, I had to decide what bills to pay and what not. I had to utilize food banks because I chose to pay bills to keep the roof over my head. I'm a single mom of 2 small children. I even received a water shutoff notice. If we allow donated leave for critical illnesses, we can allow donated leave to those to make us whole when we are choosing paid leave. 30% of our wage versus 100 seems like a win-win financially for all. Please take care of your employees so that we can take care of our county. Working in behavioral health and corrections for over 15 years, I have been to many people's homes who are in crisis, using substances, and with family members who are wanting to help their loved ones, but by vicariously harming them. Each county in Oregon has been required to have a mobile crisis response team. This team is to be 2 people upon the initial encounter, which is an ORS requirement. This behavioral health team is to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Michelle, you're at time. I'll give you just a couple seconds to wrap up.
Okay. We attempted to bargain and we were told not. We were told that our daytime jobs are no more dangerous than our response in the evening. All we are asking is to have safety in numbers and to be treated with equality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. As stated earlier, my name is Joseph Moore, and I'm an engineering and surveying tech for Benton County Public Works. I've been with Benton County for 5 years. In that time, I've had the privilege to be on the AFSCME bargaining team twice now, and I've had the honor of being the Benton County Chief Steward for the last 4 years. I have struggled for weeks now on what I wanted to say here today. As a member of the bargaining team, I could go on about the struggles we have had at the bargaining table, from safety language to holiday pay issues, but most importantly, the inequity of wages offered to members from management. In March, 112 non-repped positions received $1.8 million in raises. The top 63 of those accounted for 1.6 of that 1.8. The highest raise that was given to a non-rep position could give 5 A12 Step 3 AFSCME employees a 30% raise each and still have money left over for the budget. As Chief Steward, I could address the erosion of trust, morale, and fear of retaliation members feel from and towards management. How there are departments that suffer from high turnover, burdening my members with management's failures, but management is never the problem and ironically still hasn't found the solution. To the blatant failures that I have witnessed firsthand by Benton County in regards to grievances and unfair labor practices. But it was only after I separated myself from the guttural emotional responses I was having that I was finally able to realize what I needed to say today. It is my humble opinion that the root problem of all of this is the systematic separation of you, the commissioners, from us, your employees, and the struggles we have and are currently facing. You are told only what those who wish to protect their jobs and egregious pay raises feel you need to be told. Your appointed county administrator, the newly appointed deputy county administrator, and even you as commissioners have been removed from key committees and roles that someone with the power to affect change, right wrongs, and protect the employees of Benton County should sit on, only to be given a one-sided recommendation of what needs to be done, if that. AFSCME Local 2064 makes up almost 65% of the county's employees. They are the ones who are directly and indirectly interacting with the citizens of the county the most. Failing us is failing them. I urge you to personally reconnect with your members and the committees that affect their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to Nikki if she has her sound back.
Yes, I think I do. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for that delay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak this morning. I'm a proud counselor in QMHP for Benton County Adult Behavioral Health. Many of you may know, but some of you may not. I've lived in Benton County for most of my life. I was born here, went to primary school here, graduated from CV, and then later OSU. I took a slight detour for graduate school, and then I returned back home in 2013, where I became the QMHP for the adult outpatient team. I feel so blessed to be able to serve the community that gave so much to me. Recently, I've hit a roadblock. Burnout is real, time off is limited, and pay is meager with our high demands. In June, I had the privilege of buying my first home with a 20% down payment, I might add. However, I wasn't able to purchase here in Benton County because the reality is we simply can't afford it. After some research, I realized that as a professional county employee with a master's degree and making not even $5,000 more pre-tax than what's considered low income for Benton County. I also learned that I'm making less than $100,000 less than what it would take to purchase a home in Benton County. One of the county's goals is to reduce the carbon footprint, and this may seem a little bit out of the way, but I don't know how we can do that when our county employees are forced to commute nearly 200 miles per week like I am, because I can't afford to live here. I know I'm not alone in this. We can't afford to live sustainably in Benton County. And very briefly, prior to coming to Benton County, I was working for an organization, another community mental health, in a rural area, I might add, where we had a little bit more flexible work schedules that allowed us to take better care of ourselves. We earned a little bit more time off, and we did have additional county-sponsored holidays. So not only were we getting more time off, but we had more free time to be able to flex our schedules. I only get 8 hours of vacation time off per month, and with the 5 days a week, that means that I have to take 5 months to accrue enough time to be able to take 1 week off of work. This is a fast track for burnout. When I was previously working for a space, we had a little bit more flexibility in our schedules, working 4/10s with more paid time off. I didn't have burnout. But coming here with the 6 months of no paid time off, not allowed to take any kind of vacation for the first 6 months, and then only getting 8 hours per month, the burnout is pretty real. Wrapping this up, I want to say I am so grateful to be working here, and I hope that I can continue to serve the community that gave so much to me. But I need a little bit of support. I need a competitive wage. I need a little bit more time off and some flexibility so that I can take care of myself to take care of the community. We can't pour from an empty cup, but from my point of view, with me and my coworkers, we are all pretty darn close to empty. Please help us take care of ourselves so that we can be a county at your service every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now welcome up our next group, Dave Malone from Public Works and Asara Siddiqui from Health.
Good morning. My name is David Malone, and I've worked for Benton County Public Works since January of 2010. I'm in my 15th year here. In 2011, a classification study was conducted, and the A, B, and C pay bands that we are now all familiar with were put into place for all Benton County employees, no matter what department you were in, whether you were union represented or non-represented. Some of those, I'm going to use a C41. Some of those titles are Business Analyst 1, Healthcare Professional 1, Program Coordinator 1, Technical Analyst 1. The idea at the time that we were told was this would bring parity across the county employee structure. If you worked as a financial analyst for the sheriff department and you worked as a financial analyst for the health department, you would still be making the same wage. It didn't matter if you were union represented or not. In July 1st of 2015, the non-represented salary schedule versus the AFSCME represented salary schedule shows the parity, as the AFSCME represented employee as step 1 of C41 made $7 per year more than a non-represented employee, less than $1 a month difference. One problem with that was that the AFSCME employee was held to a maximum of step 6 on the salary structure, as we were negotiating, I should say, not arguing, about the pay for performance. The non-represented employee could go all the way through step 11. So you started at step 1 at the same, but the ending point was not the same. By the time we get to July 1st of 2023, the non-represented employee at step 1 of C41 makes $7,462 a year more than an AFSCME represented employee at the same step 1 of C41. That's at the minimum starting end of the salary schedule. At the maximum end of the pay scales in 2023, the non-represented employee in C41 could make $19,889 more than an AFSCME represented employee in the same position. This is before last year's pay increases. January 1st of 2024, the non-represented employee as step 1 of C41 makes $10,808 more than an AFSCME represented employee as step 1 of C41. At the maximum end, the non-represented employee can make $24,917 more. than an AFSCME represented employee. All we are asking for is parity in the pay structure for doing the same jobs. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the time to speak today. My name is Sada Siddiqui, and I'm a member of the union's bargaining team and a trustee on their board. I previously served our county as your Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Coordinator, and I'm currently serving as a Health Equity Coordinator. However, I'm not here in either of those capacities, and I'm attending today on my personal time. I learned about the amazing work our union does almost immediately when I started working for the county. Not only did I learn about the important work they are doing, I saw how needed their presence and work is here. Despite only working for this county for 1.5 years, it wasn't long before I began witnessing and even experiencing on occasion the great inequities that exist in our workforce. While no workforce is perfect, it's certain that some of the workplaces are better than others in the treatment of their employees. Benton County's treatment of their employees is by far one of the worst I've ever seen or experienced. For a county that boasts so much about equity to the public and to our partners, they consistently fall short of practicing what they preach, particularly when it comes to the treatment of their employees. For example, there is nothing equitable about paying certain members of your workforce less than others for doing the same job, or pushing back on safety concerns and the ability to resolve safety issues, especially when that costs someone's life in recent years. There's nothing equitable about dismissing our concerns for our well-being in the workplace, or about paying some employees so little that they have to sleep in their cars, paying them so little that they can't even afford to live in the community they serve, paying them so inadequately that they have to take out a personal loan or borrow money just to move, paying them so little that they can't even afford rent for themselves, their children, and their loved ones. I can't tell you the number of colleagues I've talked to here who live paycheck to paycheck, myself included, while simultaneously balancing the needs of their families, such as aging parents, sick or disabled loved ones, or even their own health issues. Most of us are just getting by. There's a reason we struggle with hiring new staff and retaining employees. The lack of adequate compensation and the lack of fair treatment of employees is why. I'd like to know how certain members of our leadership, including HR, can justify raises that equal an entire year's salary for certain employees. For example, one of the raises, which was $50,000, is the entire year's salary of some of our most valuable and important staff members, the very people who come face to face with our community members and work hard for our community on a daily basis, such as and not limited to our CSRs, our health navigators, or our public works employees, which includes individuals who keep our community safe. When we get snow or ice, for example, they put their own well-being at risk to ensure we as community members can get what we need. In my brief time here, I've been blown away by the passion and service my peers provide to our community and to each other. It's a privilege to work alongside some of the hardest workers I've ever met, and a privilege to work for a community I love. At the end of the day, we know who we are serving, and it's always going to be our community. So shouldn't it be the right thing to do and in the county's best interest to adequately compensate the workforce who serves our community and build our internal capacity to do so? I strongly urge you, commissioners, to support not only us as employees, but also as members of the community that you've been elected to serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next group. Kaylee Olson from Health and Gabby Dibble from Finance.
Oh, that's the red light. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you for your time this morning. My name is Kaylee Olson, and I'm sure you recognize me from my role as Communications Coordinator for the Benton County Health Department. I've worked at Benton County for 6 years now in various roles in the Health Department and CHC. I've also served in the Joint Information Center during the COVID-19 pandemic and have held various roles on our AFSCME Executive Board, including the role of Vice President. Today, I'd like to draw your attention to Benton County's 2040 Thriving Communities Initiative, which, as you know, centers equity, health, and resource efficiency at the heart of all its core values. Core values that include supporting a prosperous, balanced, equitable, and sustainable economy, and striving for access to affordable, safe, and stable housing for all. But did you know that we have represented employees here at Benton County who are currently experiencing or who are at risk of homelessness? Did you know that the majority of our staff who represent historically marginalized communities work in some of our lowest paid positions, those in the A and B bands? Did you know that our lowest paid positions make less than what fast food restaurants pay their employees? These are the staff who are here working at your service every day, embodying the true meaning of public service and the values that Benton County claims to hold. These employees are every bit a part of this community, yet they're being treated by Benton County leadership as if they are less than. As you're well aware, Benton County is the highest rent burden county in Oregon, yet when negotiating wages, AFSCME represented employees are compared to counties like Umatilla, Josephine, who have similar populations but wildly lower costs of living. When HR conducts a wage study for non-represented staff, they compare themselves to Multnomah County with a much larger population, but a more comparable cost of living. As a result, Benton County spent $1.8 million in raises for its non-represented staff, with 1.6 of that going to those who already made six-figure salaries. Meanwhile, our represented staff still struggle to make ends meet. Did you know that some department directors received raises that are worth more than our lowest paid positions make all year? I ask you, where's the equity in that? Benton County is where I work, where I live, and where my community is. My husband works for Lynn Benton Food Share. We're both public servants working for the greater good of our community, yet neither of us could afford to live here on a single salary alone. If things don't change, we'll never be able to afford a house here, and we'll never be able to afford to have children here. I'm a taxpayer here. Are my taxes keeping the 1% on top and us 99% on the bottom? So today I'm not asking for a lot. I'm asking you to remember the values that you promised to uphold as an elected official of this community. And I'm asking you to apply these values to all of your employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for your time and attention. My name is Gabby Dibble. I work across the hall from you in finance. I've been an employee with Benton County for over 3 years, and I testified at the last BOC meeting as a new employee where we had similar testimony. It is frustrating as an employee to have the people sitting across the bargaining table from your union saying you and your coworkers don't deserve a fair wage to keep up with the skyrocketing inflation of the last few years. Meanwhile, several people on that side of the table have opted to give themselves the very thing they are denying us. 4 of the management bargaining team members were given raises that totaled over $100,000. This is more than the annual salary of 2 customer service representatives combined. Just one of those 4 raises totaled over $50,000 alone. Of the 115 non-represented employees at Benton County, nearly 16% received an average pay increase in 1 year. This did not include whether they were qualified for a step increase in the same year. AFSCME employees are only being offered 4% if they are an A or B band and an 8.4% if they are a C band. Where is the equity in that? I thought we wanted to be an employer of choice. At least that is what is on our HR recruiting page. I believe Benton County's management may have forgotten who they're bargaining with. We're the people staffing front desks, responding to crisis calls, maintaining your parks, roads, water and sewer systems, putting on your fair and rodeo every year, the people greeting your patients, and generally taking care of the county that pays our wages. Instead, one of the largest salary increases went to an internal-facing department head who already has the support of a deputy director, an executive assistant, and almost no part in any community-facing programs or services. We know you, the board, are not in the dark about how bargaining has progressed. You receive monthly updates from HR, and our very own union president has shared emails and spreadsheets with you from our bargaining sessions. You have the information from both sides, and nothing has changed. Why must we come to you directly each time we need a new contract? Consider the impression your bargaining team is leaving on the employees and the people of this county. These patterns define how this government is viewed by the community it's governing. A track record of denying fair holiday leave, double standards for donating to sick employees, failing to provide livable wages, failing to abide by the state laws for our crisis teams, a shameful turnover rate. Need I go on? I will be clear, I do not want to be here calling out people I work with, potentially upsetting a pleasant work environment and relationships I worked very hard to cultivate. but I won't stand by as my fellow hardworking union siblings get brushed aside every bargaining session. We will not ratify a contract that leaves anyone behind. We at Local 2064 just want to do our jobs and not fight with our employer every few years. Commissioners, with all due respect, please start taking care of your employees so we can take care of our county. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to take a little bit of a break and invite Ken Eklund to speak.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if we can have my presentation come up. Okay, super. So good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ken Eklund, North Benton County resident. And I just want to say here that I'm supportive of the other voices in the room today. I'm here with a very brief walkthrough of how Republic Services has represented the landfill gas emissions at Coffin Butte Landfill. So next slide, please. In 2021, before the Planning Commission, Ian McNabb was asked about this directly. His answer was a very minimal amount, quote unquote. He also promised to get the commission the estimate they were looking for, but he never did. Next slide. As you know, without that information, the Planning Commission can't say there will be no significant impacts from landfill gas, and they denied the application. Next slide. About 7 months later, as you now know, an EPA inspection uncovers many large leaks of landfill gas at the landfill. Republic Services failed to mention that report to Benton County. Next slide. 5 months later, during Benton County Talks Trash, questions arise about landfill gas, especially its methane pollution component. Republic Services immediately presses for all these questions not only to be ignored, but to be stricken from the record of BCTT. So next slide. Republic proposed this drastic action to delete the information entirely that had been brought forward and pretend it never happened, while it was sitting on an EPA report and under an EPA investigation about this very issue. Next slide. Now it's 2023 and technology is enabling us to begin to see the landfill gas leaks at Coffin Butte landfill directly. They are huge. I sent your commissioners an in-depth explainer about Carbon Mapper. So next slide. The technology shows that one leak at Coffin Butte landfill put the landfill in the top 10 of climate damaging point sources in the state. That's one leak. Next slide. So we can see why Oregon's U.S. Congresspeople are urging action on Coffin Butte landfill, and why going forward Benton County government needs to question all the received wisdom and independently verify all the representations of fact that Republic makes to it. I would now play you the video clip of Ian McNabb saying that the methane leakage at Coffin Butte landfill is a very minimal amount, but I'm out of time and I really want to respect the other voices in the room. I sent you that clip directly. Commissioners, I urge you to listen to it if you haven't already. For everyone else, I will submit the materials mentioned here to coffinbuttefacts.org. So I hope you all will be able to find them there later this week. Thank you, Commissioners, for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ken. And your materials, as requested, will be included with the minutes from this meeting. So they'll also be available in that packet.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fifth group up is Shayna Steingass and Michaela Wolgamott.
Good morning. I'm Shay Steingass, the Environmental Project Coordinator for Public Works. I coordinate several programs, including the Ag and Wildlife Protection Program, and I love it here. I love my job. I've never met coworkers so kind, so hardworking, or so engaged as I have here. When I started at the county, I did not ask for a salary above step 2 because requesting BOC approval seemed risky. Instead, I created a strict budget down to the dollar to be able to take this job opportunity. Unfortunately, I quickly realized it was not enough. I found myself using the food bank for a significant period after starting here because I could not afford to eat without going into debt. I cannot tell you the level of financial stress I have endured in the last few years. Last summer, I fed myself by trading farm and gardening labor for food. Despite thinking about every dollar, I would have absolutely lost my house in the last few years if not for financial support from my family. My mortgage is the same cost as an apartment today. Workers starting at the county do not even have these same opportunities. And as an organization that values a diverse, vibrant workforce, I do not think we can achieve either if taking a job here requires a 2-income household or outside financial support. While I'm blessed to own a home, there are many things I do not have. I rarely travel, even for weekends, because I cannot afford to stay at a hotel. I can rarely afford to go out with my friends. I cannot buy name brand food or even shop at my preferred store. I cannot afford salon services. I cannot pay for services like landscaping or moving heavy things. I watch life go by as I miss holidays with my family back home, including every single Christmas and Thanksgiving since starting here.
I'm gonna cry, bro.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. As somebody with chronic illness, I wonder if my health will hold out long enough until year 10 when my leave accruals are finally enough to be able to travel. Why I love government and what makes it so great is a workplace of people who live and thrive in their community and want to make it better because they have a stake in it. The cost of living here will not decline anytime soon. As an employer, you can choose to minimize salaries and leave and save a fraction of funds, but you will lose workers with institutional knowledge and people who want to be here, the people that make this organization so special. I have seen many of these people depart in my 2.5 years. Leadership has an important choice to make: to acknowledge and improve systemic issues or act, thank you, as if they do not exist. In the long run, one is much more costly than the other. Thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Shay.
Is it on? Okay. Good morning, commissioners, administrators, Benton County taxpayers, and all of my fellow coworkers.
You might want to put the mic a little closer. Thank you.
Scoot closer.
Thank you.
My name is Mikkel Walgamot, and I am the Supported Employment and Education Specialist, QMHA, for Benton County Behavioral Services. I am here today on unpaid time because I feel this time is worth using my voice. I live in Benton County. My kids go to school in Benton County, and I work in and for Benton County. I can't afford to live in Benton County anymore, to the point I got a second job as a bartender for the Corvallis Knights this summer, just to give my kids a summer. The union is currently asking that our pay bands be matched to what non-represented make and bring us up to market, including the ECI, so that I didn't have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet in one of the most expensive counties to live in Oregon. I have been employed since 2015 for Benton County and have given this county everything I had because I believe they were the best county to work for and raise a family in. I went to night school while working in Benton County, while working part-time for Benton County, so I could go back and get my bachelor's degree so I could qualify for a better full-time position. When I accepted this promotion in 2021 to the current position I have, I was told by the deputy director that everyone starts at step 1, even if it is considered a promotion. I now make less than most of my coworkers because of pay equity and my previous years with the county being counted as lower level service. I did everything I was supposed to do to better my life and better the services I was giving to those who live in Benton County because I take my position seriously and I strive to be the best steward I can be. Part of the negotiations is longevity pay that the county is declining and wanting. It doesn't make sense to me to not want to keep people employed, especially those who have worked 10 plus years. I want to be able to buy a house in Benton County where my kids go to school. I want to be able to proudly say that I work for the county until I retire. I want to be able to proudly say that this county cares about its employees and their families. I want to be able to proudly say that this county cares about its workers as much as it cares about its management. At the end of the day, I want my daughters to stand proudly and say, my mom works for Benton County, and know that that's the best place to be and the best place that I could have raised them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next group is Julia Clymer and Deanne Hammond.
Good morning. My name is Julia Clymer. I am a medical records clerk and the Deputy Vital Statistics Registrar with the Health Department. And this next month, it will be 5 years since I started with the Benton County Health Department as an on-call CSR. I was excited when I was offered the job because I've always wanted to work somewhere where I can make a difference in my community. I was even more excited because I grew up hearing how wonderful it is to work for local government because they are supposed to take care of their people. I was even assured when I was hired that Benton County strives at minimum to pay a living wage. And yet here I am, not making a living wage. Despite having moved up in pay band and earning a degree, I'm still struggling. I have to spend quite a bit more than the 30% of my income to be able to rent any place here in Benton County. Your take-home pay has to be 2.5 to 3 times more than the rent payment, and I don't have that. I am lucky that I've lived in the apartment that I have for so long because there's no way I could qualify to live anywhere else in Benton County with the current costs. My growing kids and I are pretty much trapped in a place that we outgrew long ago. It is recommended that a person place about 20% of each check into savings. That isn't happening either. Just like my coworkers, missing one paycheck could break me. A couple of unpaid days could break me, and this is terrifying. A coworker recently lived what I consider to be one of my biggest nightmares. A single parent with no savings in the coffers with a cancer reoccurrence. I myself am a cancer survivor, and that in itself is a very bumpy road. The thing about cancer treatment is that it treats one thing but causes a slew of other issues. I have to see specialists to maintain the long-term side effects of my treatment. Treatment substantially increased my risk of certain secondary cancers, such as leukemia. So in the case of reoccurrence of secondary cancers, it's not a question of if, but when. I have nothing saved because there isn't enough left over to do so. What happens if it happens to one of my kids or my animal? What happens to my housing? So many what ifs. Imagine living every day in a fight or flight survival mode and all the stress that comes with that, constantly feeling like you're about to drown. Also, how long has it been since you've had to count pennies at the grocery store, that you've had to tell your children no, they can't have something because you can't afford it? That you just had purchased all the bare essentials and were left with less than $1 in your bank account. So you had to walk a very tricky thin line until the next paycheck. I've done all that just this month and more. Then to hear the bargaining process and know that our head of HR, who benefited on the recent management raises in a big way, doesn't view us as human beings. It's really sickening. She has no regard for the people in the lower pay bands that work face-to-face with the community on a daily basis, considering what the role of HR is supposed to be and how poorly she is performing the job. I'm unsure how she is still able to continue. I could go on and on about this. This is just a snippet. I could tell you stories from coworkers who couldn't be here today. We feel so let down. None of us are asking for a big lottery-sized payout. We are just asking to be shown that we matter, that we are valued, that our contribution to this county matters, and that we are able to put food on our table that isn't top ramen. I don't understand why it is such a big ask for us to be treated like humans.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deanne Hammond, Engineering Survey. My statement is fairly short. Management can't do their jobs without us, period. There's no way that they can function and perform and do everything that they need to do without us. So it's a real slap in the face when they base their wages on actual cost of living and refuse to do the same for us. I've been working in a specialized discipline with this county for over 6 years now, and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. Consider also that management does not adhere to the Better Business practice of fostering worker retention. Without living wages based on actual cost of living and in the absence of retention pay, there is no reason for any of us to stay. I stay because this is my home, and being exploited in one's own home is the worst kind of abuse. I'm disheartened and disgusted by this abuse, and I would like it to stop. Stop feeding the machine that further separates the working class from the middle class. Management can't do their jobs without us, and if we have to strike to prove it, we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is are Samantha Bailey and Chris McFarland.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for listening to us today. I'm Sam Bailey from the Health Department. As some of you will have already heard me speak about the path that led me here, how at the end of my abusive marriage, I had nothing tying me to Idaho, where my status as a bisexual person and LGBTQ advocate put my job and my housing in danger repeatedly. In 2016, when circumstances emboldened the loudest voices of hate in Idaho, I spent an entire year saving up to move. I chose a room in a quad apartment. It was all I could afford, and I shared a bathroom with 3 strangers. I still wound up going into debt. I started working at the county, and I found myself surrounded by people for the first time in my life who showed me I could be safe. They were living their values, serving their community, and making people's lives better. I was and am so proud to be here. I share all of this because over the course of the bargaining discussions, I've been hearing all of these percentages thrown around, all of these numbers thrown around as if they're disconnected from the truth of how people live their lives. So here are some more. In 2018, I was finally able to afford my own apartment again. It was only a studio, but it was all mine. And in 2023, I received notice from my landlord that the rent would be increasing by 14.6%. Placed up against the wage increases that I had been receiving for the previous 5 years in the 1 to 3% range, that meant I couldn't afford to live there anymore. This place I scrimped and saved for was now too expensive for me after 4 years of rent increases in the 9 to 10% range because of Oregon's rent controls. I didn't have savings to put a deposit down on a new place, and I'm one of the lucky ones. My partner's family lives out past LC, so I could move into their guest room, and I'm being allowed to build myself a little building on their property. But I went from celebrating having my own bathroom to sharing one with an 11-year-old. And if I am truly lucky, this time next month, I'll be living in a glorified shed in someone's backyard. I understand that the number talk is necessary, but those numbers are tied to real lives. The difference between 3% and 15% for me could mean homelessness, and the difference between 4% and 17% can decimate a family's food budget. Saying one segment of your workforce deserves to be paid in line with the market while the remainder do not feels like building a less deserving second class into the organization. HR says, and I quote, "Pay for positions represented by a union is established through contract negotiations," but fails to grapple with the fact that in those negotiations, someone is telling us, no, we can't have a living wage, we can't have the same cost of living considerations, and even for the same position, we can't have the same wages our unrepresented counterparts make. For some of us, that is bound to mean that we can't keep living and working here. I'm hopeful you'll find some way to make it right, to show your staff that you value them and that you see and honor their humanity as well as the percentage they're asking for. We want to know that you think we all deserve to be able to afford to survive. Thank you.
Thank you.
That it? Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm the last speaker. I'm going to be kind of short and sweet. I do kind of want to apologize. I'm currently on crisis call, so if I get a call, this might have to be cut short. Thank you, Commissioner Arjot, Commissioner Weiss, Commissioner Malone, for allowing me the opportunity to come share with you my concerns as a Benton County public servant working for a fair and equitable contract. My name is Chris McFarland. I'm a substance use disorder counselor. I'm also a master's degree clinician for behavioral health. I'm also one that will be manning the 2-person 24-hour crisis response team. I speak to you today about wages and the cost of living. I'm the head of the household of my family and the sole financial provider in our family. My wife is on a very small fixed income because of a military disability and therefore cannot work. As a result of the continued huge increase in the cost of living in general, but more importantly here in Benton County, we can no longer afford to live here where I work and have begun to look elsewhere that is more affordable, as I don't make enough in wages to offset the increases in living. I have been a dedicated county employee since 2015 and absolutely love my job working with the most vulnerable population in this community that no one else wants to work with. The high acuity, severely mentally ill, homeless, battling addictions, and struggling with every other social determinant of life are those that I give my passion, my time, my energy to every day. There are times though, now my wife and I talk about how we are literally one paycheck away from joining my clients camping down by the river, as county management has continually declined fair and equitable wages, unless it's for them. I am not asking to be the highest paid. All I am asking for is to make the same amount of wages and benefits as the Benton County non-reps make. Cost of living increases to coincide with inflation and the 4.5 to 5% cost of living increase yearly. I know my own rent was just increased 9% this year. This yearly increase is not sustainable for my family and what the county management deems as fair and equitable pay for its represented employees. Again, I'm not asking for the same thousands of dollar raises that some of the county management received. I am only asking for fair market wages that allow us to continue to live in the very county that I serve in and hope to retire in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have one more name on my list. That's Dylan Hansen.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I work full-time in the crisis department. I am also the jail and forensics liaison. I serve the most vulnerable people in this community every day, and I do it because I believe that I can help them help themselves. Unfortunately, my ability to act as an agent of change has been significantly inhibited over the past 8 months on the crisis team. We're in direct violation of OAR 309-072-0140. We do have 24-hour crisis response. It is not staffed by the two professions that it is legally obligated to be staffed by. We are breaking the law. At some point, OHA will not be forgiving and we will not get money for these services, and someone else may take over the contract. In early December, we fulfilled this requirement for all of 3 days until it was taken away from our community, specifically the most vulnerable people in our community, because the bargaining team for the county had no interest in negotiating over a change in working conditions. We are 48th in mental health, and we're going to keep being 48th in mental health if we continue to act like this. This is unacceptable. A couple of weeks ago, one of my clients completed suicide, and we had to go home that day, and knowing that we did everything we could, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened that weekend if we had a true two-person response, if we weren't 48th in mental health, and if we truly cared and supported these people to the best of our extent. I overdrafted my bank account last year going to therapy, and these are the things that I have to deal with at work. So when I come in and Tracy Martineau, I'm going to say her name, I do not care, does not care. She shows blatant disregard for the things that we experience and deal, as evidenced by the ULPs that have been filed. Some have been founded. Ricky Garcia, who is a behavioral health manager who continues to argue and quabble over safety language to keep us safe. Go ask the ACT team how many times they've been chased by clients or assaulted by them. We can talk about safety. We are put in an unconscionable ethical bind some of us actually have social work licenses and ethical obligations where we can choose to, for the first time, for some of us in our careers, to put ourselves first and take care of ourselves and strike, or we can continue to serve our clients. It's unconscionable. And I just can't believe that I'm standing here as a government employee, someone who, as a result of my community and my hard work and dedication, pulled themselves out of poverty. I was on Section 8 2 years ago and food stamps, that I am now making the choice between serving the most vulnerable people in my community or ensuring that I get to go home every day and feed my dog and see my loved ones and take care of myself and not overdraft my bank account just to go to therapy. I go to therapy so that I can be good at my job. Okay? This is unacceptable. And I'm sick and tired of it. And I just beg that you guys ensure some sort of accountability now and for the next contract. Otherwise, you've pissed off a lot of social workers. You've pissed off AFSCME, which is 1.4 million people. You are represented officials, and we will do something about it. I yield my time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. Greatly appreciate it. And we will take all of your comments into account as we move forward.
I see a couple more hands raised online.
Okay. Not on my list, but we have additional folks. Please go ahead.
Unless they were just raising hands out of solidarity. Is there anyone else online that would like to? Yes, anyone else online that would like to provide testimony?
Hearing no voices, we will move on to the rest of our agenda. But thank you very much for taking the personal time to come and speak to us directly. Okay, next up we have Sarah Hartstein and Amy Young representing the Regional Community Health Improvement Plan. And I believe someone online has their mic unmuted. Could you please mute your microphones?
Good morning. It's good to see you all, and it was good to hear our union voices in the room this morning. My name is Sarah Hartstein. I'm serving as the Interim Deputy Director of Public Health for Benton County. I use she, her pronouns. And with me today is Amy Young, who is our new Regional Partnership for Community Health Project Manager. Lincoln County holds the finances for this position, but it's a truly regional shared position. And so I'll allow for Amy to do any further introductions and move through the presentation.
Good morning. Good morning. Like Sarah said, I'm Amy Young. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the project manager for the Partnership for Community Health on the Regional Community Health Improvement Plan and Assessment. I am technically a Lincoln County employee because they do hold the management of the grant. But like Sarah said, I really work for the partnership and all 9 partners therein, which gets a little confusing, but I like to think I'm up to the challenge. And I do have a desk at Benton County as I am a Benton County resident. So I'm here a couple of times a week and absolutely love getting to work with all my county colleagues, but especially those in the Healthy Communities team where I have a desk. So we'll go on with the slides. Oops. Oh. So this is just an overview of the presentation that we'll be giving. We have some project updates, a little bit more information on the goals and strategies within the CHIP, which is the Community Health Improvement Plan. I will aspire to spell out any acronyms. A little bit on implementation and action planning, and then evaluation and quality improvement. So the project updates, like Sarah said, the first highlight is that the Partnership for Community Health is fully staffed. That means myself, I am full-time project manager for the project. And we have Kate Marcy, who's a newly hired epidemiologist. She is half-time on the Partnership for Community Health doing data and epidemiology work, and her other half, she's an epidemiologist for the county. And so we were both hired in mid-May, so we've been doing a lot of time the onboarding stuff that you get to do when you're a new employee anywhere, as well as I think I speak for both me and Kate, really learning the landscape, learning all the different partners, learning how they work together, and learning how we can best support them in their work and advancing our collective goals and the organization's individual goals and needs and obligations in the Community Health Improvement Plan. So from a project management standpoint, some of our higher priority initiatives are developing an operating budget and cost sharing agreement. We are funded, I believe, primarily through the modernization grant from OHA, Oregon Health Authority, that's shared with Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties, as well as financial contributions and in-kind support from Samaritan Health Services, IHN, CCO, and some other organizations. But we're just working on formalizing that into an operating budget and making sure that we have cost-sharing arrangements that make sense and are equitable for all our partners. We are codifying, solidifying the timeline for the CHIP-CHA, and that's taking into account all of the regulatory and internal needs of our partners, including it's generally a 5-year cycle for counties for accreditation purposes. We are integrating that with some reporting and regulatory requirements with Samaritan for their community benefit plan, as well as the CCO and some of our other community-based organizations that have priorities therein. Like we said, working, getting I'm really fortunate to come into this position with all our partners really already working well together and having very good relationships, though I do also see the value in having a central point person that can really help I appreciate that, really help with some of the higher level coordination and bringing that together, and working with Kate on solidifying our progress measures and goals for community change. That was in progress when we started, but is really, now that we're fully staffed, we can really put a lot of that into writing. And the other big project that we're working on is a website. I believe each county already has a page on their website around their community health improvement plans and assessments, but we are working on making a common website for the whole partnership. And it's going to have a nice unified design. We have our own branding and logo, as well as data dashboards that'll probably be in a second phase of development. But I heard a previous speaker mention that the county likes dashboards, and we are hopefully going to deliver there. We had to put a little bit of the administrative aspects of the project on hold while we were working on the CHIP and getting our staffing up to date. But one of the things that I am working on as we speak is reestablishing our relationship with our web designers and all the other partners there. And I believe we are planning for a phase 1 of some of the less technical components of the website sometime in the fall, and that I don't have a hard date yet, but hopefully by 2025 for a phase 2 with some of the more data components. As you may know, generally speaking, components, and this is true of any CHIP, are goals, which are long-term outcomes that set the direction for our priority needs. Strategies, those are the activities and the more specific things that we're doing. And the project measures and indicators that are data points, setting baselines, setting goals. And it's not just data and numbers, it's also narrative and other qualitative indicators of change. I don't want to make this just numbers. And so as we're moving into implementation, the big things that we're focusing on are developing SMARTY goals around our strategies. You may be familiar with that, or SMART goals, which is refining our objectives to make sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, and the E that goes from SMART to SMARTY is inclusive and equitable. You'll see we have a dedicated goal around equity, but we want to infuse that into all our strategies as well. So that's why it's named out SMARTY. So the priority areas, and these have been established based on input from, I believe, a 2-year cycle of working groups, planning groups, community input. And that's all going to be outlined in the document that's underway. Access to affordable housing. I believe we've heard that that is obviously a big need in Benton as well as Lynn and Lincoln counties. Access to quality care, behavioral health, and what we're calling IDARE, which is inclusion, diversity, anti-racism, and equity. And underneath those goal areas, we have, I believe it's 3 strategies per goal area, which is a nice set of ambitions to have. But I think with all our partners, we can really, make a difference across all those areas, across all our counties. And I won't read these all out to you. I believe our logic models are included in the packet, so you can read those in more detail. Just an example of what a logic model looks like if you haven't been to grad school recently. We have our input, our
Hello.
overarching goals, the strategies, and some more specific measures.
How can I help you? Excuse me, but someone online has their mic on and they're in a customer service role.
Unless they want to hear about the chip, the more the merrier.
Thank you.
So again, I won't read all the logic models. You can, do that in the packet, and I'm of course happy to answer questions. But these are how we've broken down the goals and strategies, as well as the progress measures, which are recounting the outputs, the activities that we're doing. For example, affordable housing is up on the screen right now. So we're looking at everything from the amounts of grants that we'll give to organizations, as well as indicators like point-in-time homeless counts or McKinney-Vento data. Access to quality care. We do have some things that are focused on the health system side. So that's probably going to be a lot of Samaritan, but as well as things that cut across all counties. And again, you'll see social determinants of health really well represented in there. Increasing housing is part of that. Behavioral health, we have a lot of needs there. So we have a lot of goals and strategies, a lot of coordination between organizations, as well as reducing barriers is a big part of that. And inclusion, diversity, anti-racism, and equity. Again, a lot of coalition building. We have a lot of priorities around data justice, making sure that we're accurately counting our disparities and our situations, as well as making sure that voices are represented in a just way. And so action planning and next steps, things that we've already done, develop the priorities. In progress, writing the chip. We have a fantastic technical writer who's probably at her keyboard as we speak, finalizing the document itself, as well as developing those shared goals and measures. Next steps, develop an action plan and develop SMARTY objectives. That could probably be put into in progress now. I made this slide a few weeks ago. And so this, again, I won't read this all because it's in your packet, but this is a breakdown of what SMARTY objectives are and how that's going to be guiding our prioritization, as well as, and this is just an example from the MAP 2.0 handbook, that's a common framework that's used across the country in CHIPs that I just like including this in my presentations because it just shows, how this process is organized. Evaluation and quality improvement, that is a step that we're starting to work on and are going to be taking, a lot of effort on, and Kate is also going to be playing a big role in that. One of our top priorities there is the health equity assessment, which we consider like a process evaluation of the CHIP process itself. Continuous monitoring of data, hopefully having as much as we can in dashboards and narrative formats that people can see in real time the progress that we're making. There are also annual progress reports that I believe we're statutorily required, as well as some of our other CBOs, and adapting the plan as needed because nothing goes 100% according to plan, and also accounting for emerging health issues that may come up. So that's our presentation. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact me as the project manager. Kate Marcy is going to be on data. And of course, Sarah Harstein is a fantastic resource, both for Kate and I as we're onboarding, and as well as all her involvement in all the stages of this so far and in the future.
I wanted to check in to see if Kate is online, if there's an opportunity to introduce herself to you all.
Yeah, I'm here. My name is Kate Marcy. I use she, her pronouns. As Amy said, I'm an epidemiologist in the Healthy Communities Division at the Benton County Health Department, and I'm 0.5 FTE on the Community Health Improvement Plan, and provide EPI and data support to the CHIP and the Partnership for Community Health.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, are there questions for our presenters? Well, it's a huge effort and it's taken a long time and it feels a little bit like it's a relay race because the new people, people leaving, people coming in. Sarah's been ably supporting it as the backbone from what I can tell. So thank you, Sarah, for really holding the whole process together over the duration of the project. And we welcome you, Amy, to pick that load up, run forward.
Thank you.
As you say, these planning processes are challenging because of the fact that inevitably by the time you start implementing, sometimes you're dealing with yesterday's issues, although I don't see any of these going away anytime soon. But I do have that one question that you raised yourself. How do you reallocate resources, or how does the partnership react if all of a sudden there is a sudden pressing issue that affects all of our county members? Would you have a role in that, or is this just a planning function for the kind of backbone planning?
I'd say that's a good question to formalize a response to. Sarah, if you want to give a little bit more of context there.
I think the hope is that we'll be updating our community health assessment annually with a data refresh, not the complete outreach, community engagement that we did for the original CHIP, but at least for the 5-year cycle, we'll be refreshing with data, trying to keep our pulse on where we're at in the community. We do have a steering committee that's established with partners where new issues or potential pivots can be brought up. But I'm hoping that we can stay as nimble as possible with our goal to meet community needs in the region.
Yes, and if you look in more detail, at the goals and strategies, they are fairly, broad. We are going to be drilling them down into some specific actions, but they are fairly broad with the intention that they will work and apply in, any context, even as things change with emerging issues or other shifts in the community. And, our public health and other organizational partners are very nimble and, very well poised to react to whatever will come their way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be that you mentioned being nimble and adaptive, and your charts are, some of them are fairly complicated, and I can see making some adjustment and saying, well, we're emphasizing this and de-emphasizing this. I guess I would appreciate kind of updates on just what kind of progress you're making, and versus, well, here it is, and it's a lot, but just having updates so that we have a better idea of what kind of progress and challenges that you're facing.
Yeah, I think in terms of, administratively, I'm, always happy to, periodically come with Sarah and other colleagues to update the commissioners. And we're on, hope to do similarly with our other county and organizational partners, as well as really have a goal with how we're disseminating the CHIP and the associated documents, that we don't want it to be something that just sits on a shelf or, like I say, is used by public health grad students for writing term papers, that we really do strive with the website and some of our outreach to have it be something that is, both living in terms of how it's reflecting our community and our progress, as well as we're going to place a pretty high priority on having it be accessible from language standpoints, as well as, having it available and, having information available in different formats to meet people's needs in terms of literacy and just how they like to consume information. So that is a goal. So I thank you for naming that and holding us accountable.
Thank you. Okay, we really appreciate the work, and I know that it's all chugging away there in the background. We just don't see it very often. And agreed, a periodic report would be great, probably annual. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to item 5.2. I'll begin again. Welcome.
Oh, there it is. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the time today. You will see on, I just dropped some materials off for you. For full transparency, just want to say this whole process, as I communicated with you earlier, is fluid and dynamic to say the least. This literally happened yesterday. You'll see the third bullet from the bottom is Kristen. The previous version had we were scheduling, I hit print to go to the printer and I got the email that it was actually scheduled. So I literally cannot get to the printer fast enough before things are changing. So I certainly appreciate your understanding and all that. For the public, nothing that I'm going to say everything I'm going to say is on the sheet. So there's nothing, and that will be submitted to the record. I just gave that to Amanda. So just want to make sure that process and transparency is forthcoming. I wanted to share with you in your packet that's online, there are timelines, who we met with. We included a potential spending plan, which is on the back side of that piece that I just gave you. But what I really wanted to do was talk about yesterday and our conversation with DEQ. And that was really the watershed moment that we've been waiting for. Before we get in, this is literally true. I haven't even had a chance to talk to Rachel and Rick because it happened last night at 5 o'clock. And so, again, very, very fluid. Before we get into this, I did want to revisit the obligations and the promises that we made months ago when this first started. So the piece of paper you have in front of you, it should be on the interview status as of today. You will see we've met with pretty much every county, the solid waste staff of every county in Western Oregon. That's about 20 people that Bailey and I have met with. We're currently scheduling a meeting with Lane. That's going to be a much larger conversation than the one we've had, just because of population, the new facility that they're building. That is forthcoming. We already have, we've already met with Commissioner Steve Kramer. Again, just yesterday, finalized a meeting with Commissioner Cameron in Marion, and then looking at Lincoln County as well to kind of get an elected official's perspective. As I said, we just talked to DEQ, which I'll dive into later. When that's all said and done, that should be another 10. We're looking at so far, the only acronyms that we have heard is DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality. However, this really is a transportation issue, and other, especially economic development, perhaps even water, other departments and agencies will probably be involved by the end of the process. So, and then we've already talked to some of the experts and innovators. Add on additional nonprofits and OSU staff. We've already talked to 30-ish, 35 people. We anticipate another 15 to 20. So it's been a very busy couple of months, and I just need to share with you all, it's just been a pleasure and honor to work with Bailey the entire time. It's just been a great tag team. So all that said, what you've heard me say, and this is really funny, I usually like to try to be prepared, but I have no idea what's about to come out coming from our conversation with DEQ yesterday. One of the things that you've heard me say is this separation, this disconnect between a traditional and actual materials management focus and who we've been talking to, which is mainly solid waste and recycling staff. And David Alloway, who is the director of materials or sustainable materials. It was a good conversation to get reestablished on what this will really take. And that is to be clear, and you've heard me say this over and over, this is not about Coffin Butte per se. This isn't even about landfills per se. This is about how to get upstream and to look at materials. However, and David said it perfectly, this is an opportunity for us to use this current situation as a catalyst to move into a new direction. We have whatever happens with the CUP. All of this is a web. If it is expanded, then the cap is gone, but Metro can't send stuff here, but then you've got Marion, 5 counties rely 100% on this. Using this as an opportunity to shift the conversation away from end of life and start to have the conversation beginning of life. Did I capture? Okay. And so in looking at the timelines, yes.
You a little bit.
Mhm.
You're using a lot of jargon.
Oh.
So if you can do like end of life, are you talking about end
Oh,
of
absolutely.
life of the landfill? Like, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. When we're looking at in a true sustainable way, this is all the way back to William McDonough in the 1980s and things, cradle to cradle, looking at how a material, how this pen was created, manufactured, having a thought about how it could be end of life. Back in Maryland, when I was out there, we were looking at carpet and to be looking at with the carpet industry to see, okay, when you manufacture this, can you do it in a way to de-thread, get rid of the dyes so that there really is no waste? That is way upstream. You're not even talking about recycling or waste or landfills. So when we talk about end of life, usually when we think of landfills, okay, we can recycle more or divert. Fair?
Thank you. Yeah, when looking upstream, when you look at the way products are manufactured, transported, used, and eventually disposed of, hopefully recycled or disposed of, most of the environmental impact that happens is during the manufacturing and the raw material extraction to produce those things that we consume. Very little of it, I don't want to say it's insignificant because it is significant, but very little of the environmental impact shows up as an environmental issue in a landfill.
David, you use 98% of everything is upstream. By the time you get to the end, it's only 2%. So this is where we're trying to get to your question, Rachel, of how can we start looking at this game differently? How can we start looking at this system fundamentally differently from the beginning to the end? And so that was the conversation that we had yesterday. I keep going back to Henry Ford's comment. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. We need something completely different. And so that was encouraging, talking to David, who has been doing this for 20, 30 years, trying to have the attention upstream. And it's difficult. So just had that quick little interaction with Rick. He was cautiously optimistic, as we are, that we have opportunity here as a region to be looking at us with Portland, with Willamette Valley, and looking at this as a real opportunity for us to do something that has not been done in Oregon yet. I wrote this quote down saying that Benton County has always been progressive, always been ahead of the curve, and he sees that. And how can we leverage that moving forward into this new direction? I want to stop there, and then we can kind of get back into the timelines, which I still strongly believe are applicable. I don't think anything has fundamentally changed except who we need to meet with next. And that was what David and we kind of looked down as this person, this entity, looking and trying to capture what this could become. I still think we have plenty of time for that. But I wanted to stop there and make sure that, again, this just happened. So if there's questions or comments from you before we dive into the details.
Not at the moment. Thanks.
Okay. So the one thing that we wanted to look at was the timeline to the kickoff. I still think that that's very applicable. We've already started looking at an agenda, who that might be, walking through the topics, giving an overview starting from BCT, the Benton County Talks Trash, into what is material management, giving DEQ an opportunity to speak, and give them, our consultants, RRS, the materials, and we'll be meeting with them later this week to kind of fine tune what those details will be. And so the timeline, again, I think is still on target. We do have a spending plan, a proposed spending plan on the back side of the piece of paper I just handed you. And to kind of look through, we have $400,000 budgeted. Most of that will go to consultant work. We have RRS for 176,000. We've met with them every other week and had a full meeting with their staff, which was fantastic. So they're very confident moving their deliverables forward. And now it's a matter of fine tuning this to make the effort again, on target with materials management. You will also see that we have 3 large meetings scheduled for this winter and spring, leading up to the end of our biennial budget in July. And that gives plenty of opportunity for us to really explore what this would mean. Like, what would it really do to change this game in the region, and to have a report with recommendations moving forward by next summer. That I'm very confident we can achieve. So that's where we are now.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to interrupt you. In your first bullet point, you have 14 at the end. So you have engaged with 14 separate counties. Is that correct? And from that feedback, do they believe that they're going to be participants in the SMMP as we move forward to that date in October, when we can really panel all the counties to come together to really launch what this could look like?
Yes, every single one said yes. I did put 2 little caveats. Multnomah deferred to Portland just because of size, and that makes sense. The position in Washington was vacated. That person moved to Metro, so we got a 2-for-1. Other than that, every county has said yes, including Wasco and Deschutes, which I guess technically is not Western, but they are still very interested in joining.
And a follow-up to that date in October, we would be looking to have as many commissioners who could be there as well. So we will be also inviting commissioners to this event in October as well.
Everything is on the table. Again, I think that's going to be dependent on the kickoff. Would be great just to have the entire region there and saying, yes, we're on this together. Whether that's a signal to DEQ, to the federal, whomever, to say, yes, we're on this together. Absolutely. From that point forward, then I think it starts to identify, okay, we need this subgroup or this focus over here. So
One more follow-up, I'm sorry, Zane. Could you, at the next update for SMMP, have a possible agenda for the October kickoff that the commissioners can look at as far as speakers and their roles, and what participation we possibly would get from the state?
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. And that's, we already talked to Rick, Lindsay, Bailey, and I started pulling that together yesterday. That was augmented by our conversation with David yesterday. So yes, absolutely, we'll have that.
And I'm assuming that the 4 large group meetings that you're envisioning will include a lot of those electeds and some of the other folks that are not participating in the more granular meetings, and that the 6 smaller group meetings will really be the working sessions.
Absolutely. I'm trying to figure out how much into the weeds that we want to get into. The one question that we continue to ask, especially of the electeds and then the state, is what are these drivers? What are these market signals? So, for instance, we talked to City of Portland. They required deconstruction of older residential and food compost. Okay, that sends market signals. How does that ripple effect? Who's making that decision? Is that an elected? Same thing with DEQ, with the list on the Recycle Modernization Act. That's a signal. That's where my brain is, just as your policy analyst. What decision and who makes them is going to have a ripple effect legislatively, process-wise, upstairs of community development. I was talking to Rebecca Taylor and Greg Verrett years ago about deconstruction zoning or policies. That's the conversation that needs to be had. And that was what I think David, the 3 of us and David were really diving into, is to see what are those. So I've heard it said this months ago, I'm not locked in or honed in on one outcome. It's an entire suite that we need to be looking at. And that's what I believe, and this is my impression that I'm asking Bailey, that's what got me excited talking with David. Again, we have a long road to go, but at least, and it's never happened in here in Oregon, and now we're looking at other examples to emulate to see what a region can do. That big table, if set right with the right questions, not about recycling, not about waste, but about upstream, that's very exciting. And he shared the concrete story with Marin County. He said, there are examples of where decisions made at a local level have a ripple effect on a national level. Help me out. Marin said they had to have low carbon concrete. Well, that certainly got the attention of the concrete industry overnight. These are the things that we're hoping that we could achieve here.
That sounds great. And, I'm thinking as I listen to you all thinking about that decision space and high cost, high potential outcome, high cost and low potential outcome, but that sweet spot of low cost and high potential outcome. And yeah, I'm grateful that we have consultants working with us that can help identify some of those Marin County experiences or experiences overseas and identify those levers, the policy levers that we would need to use in order to really make a significant change.
I keep harping back to Lincoln County, Paul, their solid waste. If we want to really do a plan like this, and we have things, whether or not Coffee Butte or whatever, 10 years is tomorrow. If we're going to actually create a plan and to make sure that we're looking upstream, that's the kind of time frame that we're looking at. So the sooner the better.
Yeah, well, hopefully there are some low-hanging fruit as well as that 10-year ripeness.
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Malone.
And you may get to it later, but I was curious about a little background information on resource recycling systems. I mean, all I know is they're a consultant, and just what do they bring to the table, I guess?
I think we're really lucky to have RRS as our consultant. They have a well-established reputation of working in solid waste issues in the Northwest, but they're also a nationwide consultant. So they bring a lot of experience from other states and other programs from elsewhere outside of our immediate area here. I think one of the things that we're real fortunate to have them at the lead of this is that they're also working with the Recycling Modernization Act. So part of their role is to survey cities and counties throughout Oregon to assess their recycling infrastructure needs. So that benefits us, I think, in the work that they'll do for us because they have that broader context.
And from my perspective, it's just been really great every time we talk to somebody, oh, Joel's doing this or RRS is also doing this. So exactly as even on a very high policy level, it's nice to bounce these ideas off. So yeah.
I believe our Assistant County Administrator have additional comments.
Oh, yeah, you're on.
Thanks. Just real quickly, and appreciation for Sean and Bailey's presentation and the work that they have put forward. Just a couple of things I just wanted to touch on, as Sean started off with, in terms of the focus of the work that we need to do, really getting ourselves outside of the focusing on a garbage disposal and thinking about sustainable materials. That's really where we need to try to go. And I appreciate the fact that, he got some positive response from the state in relation to that. I think I want to touch on something that Commissioner Ogerow said, though, that is going to be extremely important, and that's going to be the participation in this. Again, we've talked about the counties, and it's good that we've covered the 14 counties of the region, but it's also going to take political strength on that. And so I know that we have several commissioners that we are going to be meeting with, one Commissioner Cameron from Marion County, and I think we have another one, but I still think we need to really focus on our counties and try to get commissioner engagement as much as possible. So that's something that we may be talking to you a little bit more. In addition, in speaking to CFM, they have really recommended Senator Solman as a potential champion for this. She's from the Hillsborough area, but she is very, very passionate about this kind of work. And so to the extent that we can get that engagement. And then the last piece is, and I really think where a lot of RSS comes in, is how do we really get those innovators? Where are those creative ideas? Where are those different ways of doing business? And as we all said, there's going to be this long list of things that are maybe high expense, things that are low expense. But that's really where, if you can get that group, categorize it into three: electeds, your program folks, as well as your innovators, that's where I think the magic can happen, where we can really start to get some good thinking and a very good plan put together. So sorry to jump in. I just wanted to add that as I think this is well on its way. As Sean said, it is fluid. It does move a lot. They've done a lot of work in pulling this together. We feel very confident that we are going to be into our mid-October kickoff. We will have the first product from RSS, which is an inventory of all the sites, as well as the cost benefit strategic work that they're on. So we will have a product to be able to share there. Absolutely, we'll be able to bring an agenda to you next time, and we've already started to frame that up. So sorry to jump in. I just wanted to add a little bit of icing on this, and thank you for both of these guys. Appreciate it.
And just another caveat, I keep jumping in. The budget, the hope is also we're going to get buy-in from other counties and possible some state resources. So the goal would also be that this budget would possibly be shared with some other interested parties.
Absolutely. And I'm going to channel Commissioner Wise a little bit, because I remember the budget committee when we were talking about this, is that, this is the seed money. How do we get to that regional place to where we can be able to leverage other dollars and other supports? Because clearly, as we know, when we get into this and there are going to be different ideas, some of those are going to cost money. And so how do we get to that place of sharing those? And then there could be also policy things that we need to be able to address. That's why, and I keep saying why DEQ is an important partner here. It's one thing to get state policy introduced. It's something else to get it passed. And if you don't have the state agency there behind you to support, it's more challenging. So I think really having a good partnership with them is going to be important. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, well, keep up the good work. I'm very happy to hear about the progress of interviews and look forward to seeing the agenda and a final sense of kind of what the composition of the large group and the smaller group might be and how the process will work.
That's too.
I note that there is money for mediation and for technical writing, facilitation. I'm hoping it's not mediation. And but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Toby Lewis updating us on the intersection of National Flood Insurance Program and the Endangered Species Act compliance. And she's joined by Laurel Beyer and Shay Steingas.
Good morning. Thank you for still morning. Thank you for the ability to speak on today's agenda. I know that FEMA's timeframe and our timeframe for getting information before you in the correct meeting formats is not always in alignment. That's part of the feedback that I think FEMA has been hearing from many communities throughout the course of this process. And hopefully at some point I will have a shorter topic title on some of these meetings. Let's see. The main focus of today's conversation is an overview of the comments on FEMA's pre-decisional draft documents that were shared with cooperating agencies. These are documents that are created as part of FEMA's environmental impact statement creation review process. As a cooperating agency, we are allowed to look at them and review them and provide comments, but at the end of the day, it's FEMA's decision what information gets put in that environmental impact statement. So the most recent documents that were provided to cooperating agencies are the Path C guidance document, and then the other one is Table 1, no net loss standards. Before I get into those, the secondary item on today's agenda is just a brief update to flag some new developments in FEMA's plan for integrating the National Flood Insurance Program in Oregon with the Federal Endangered Species Act requirements. I'll bring it back up at a later meeting, but this is just to flag a new development. So, Path C guidance document. Under the final implementation plan, Path C is one of 4 choices that will be available to communities to demonstrate that they're not causing take to protected habitat in mapped special flood hazard areas. Path C allows communities to design what's called a customized community plan. And that plan can apply to all or part of a community. It can also apply to all or part, or all or only a few of the key floodplain and habitat functions that this project is meant to protect. So those 3 key floodplain and habitat functions are flood storage, as measured by the amount of unoccupied space in a mapped flood hazard area. Water quality, that's measured by the amount of impervious surface in that area, and riparian vegetation, and that's measured by the amount of tree removal that occurs. So our overall comments at this point are that this document was actually one of the easiest documents we've received to review and look through. It seems like it will be a helpful guide for communities. It's intended to just give some ideas of what types of opportunities there are to modify, make modifications to the model ordinance standard cookie cutter requirements that are an option through path A and B. It identifies options that are the communities can use for community-specific things that include community programs. Those can be existing programs or programs that a community implements. So the example in the document, I think, was a Green Streets program, but really it can be any community program that helps, that plans for or takes into account ways to mitigate development in flood hazard areas. It can address adjustment of ratios or floodplain function protection. So there are some mitigation ratios that apply to development in floodplains if it's affecting flood storage, water quality, or riparian vegetation. So it talks about options for adjusting that. And then it also talks about options for adjusting the riparian buffer zone, which right now as just a standard cookie cutter is set at 170 feet from a waterway. So it identifies ways, some general information about how communities can look at that and things that a community would need to do to evaluate whether that 170 feet is appropriate based on existing development, how the land is used in a flood hazard area, tree height, because the 170 feet is based off of a general tree height. So, and then it also goes through how those modifications should be documented and could be implemented at a variety of levels, anything from rather simple to more complex. General recommendations are to consider rephrasing some wording that sounds like it might be, communities might be able to just go to the county, their local county and ask for help, which may or may not be available. And a reminder that some local jurisdictions or county and city jurisdictions may or may not, the capacity to analyze and prepare a community compliance. I'm sorry, I have the acronym on my notes, but I lost the customized community plan. There we go. May still be an issue. And then an encouragement to FEMA to continue identifying ways to support communities through technical assistance, grants, anything else that they can come up with as the communities evaluate and implement the paths. Table 1, no net loss standards, is the other document. This is a matrix of the long-awaited identification of exactly what the mitigation ratios are that FEMA is proposing based on the biological opinion that was issued for Oregon. This document is expected to be used with the model ordinance, with the Path C guidance document, and with the habitat assessment document, guidance document, and I'll mention that one again in a minute. The table defines the amount of mitigation required when development causes a reduction of each floodplain function, so flood storage, water quality, riparian vegetation. The mitigation ratios range from 1 to 1 for reduction of, or for affecting the amount of impervious surface, 2 to 1 for affecting the amount of flood storage available on a property, and 3 to 1 to 6 to 1 for tree removal, dependent on the diameter at breast height, so the size of the tree that you're removing. It could be 3 to 1, it could be, I forget the middle one, but I think it was 5, there we go, 5 to 1 or 6 to 1. It also includes an additional multiplier for mitigation if the mitigation activities are occurring in a different waterway reach. Overall, there's still some concern about the clarity of the table content, whether or not those mitigation ratios include an assumed survival rate or natural mortality of plantings, what the requirements are for the sizing of the replacement trees, because it does identify a ratio, but it doesn't specify in that document whether the replacement trees just need to be a specific quantity or whether they need to be the same size as the trees being removed. And preventative tree removal for fire hazard and in this area, emerald ash borer beetle. Sorry, I have my acronyms on here, but I don't always remember them. Okay, there's also some concerns regarding the ratios, especially for tree replacement. Those still seem high. Feasibility of a community's ability to implement monitoring and enforcement of the mitigation requirements, and concerns regarding the ability to identify viable on and or off-site mitigation locations. Any questions about that portion before I switch into the update?
You talked about mitigation ratios 3 to 1, 6 to 1. What does that mean?
That's a good question. So at this point, this point, based on what I'm seeing in the table, it looks like it's a quantity of trees. So if you take out one tree that's 6 inches diameter at breast height, yeah, 6 inches diameter at breast height. If you take out one tree from a mapped flood hazard area, then you would need to replace it with, if it's a 3 to 1 ratio, you'd need to replace it with 3. The question is, do they have to be the same size as the one you replaced? Or if you take out an 18-inch tree, can you replace it with 3 or 5 or whatever the multiplier is? 1-inch trees, like small trees, or do they all have to be the same size as the ones that you removed? But the best that we can determine from the table is that it's a number of trees that you have to replace. So if you are disturbing impervious surface, so you're gonna dig out a section of your lawn to replace it with a dwelling, that's a 1 to 1 mitigation ratio. So you would need to make sure that if your addition to your house is 50 square feet, you're gonna have to do something on 50 square feet of your property that will improve floodplain storage without taking away, without causing a situation that would trap protected fish species on your property. If you are, you may also have to, since that would affect flood storage, that might actually be 100 square feet that you have to improve or that you have to mitigate on your property because flood storage impacts are affected by the amount of space, volume that you're occupying in the floodplain. So that's a 2 to 1 ratio.
Okay, thank you.
The technical assistance question is an interesting one, and especially when we start thinking about the small cities. And I was wondering whether the League of Oregon Cities is also at the table for this process.
They're not a cooperating agency, but there will be an opportunity to provide comments on the final draft environmental impact statement documents, and that'll be opened up to everybody in Oregon.
Okay, And it's interesting that FEMA is looking to the counties to provide that longer-term technical assistance. And I don't know how realistic it is in terms of capacity, but yeah.
So
But they recognize the skill set that many counties have.
yeah, it was listed as a potential option, but the hope is that the wording will be adjusted so that it's clear that that might not always be a realistic option.
So that they go to the feds first.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything I forgot, left out? Okay. Okay, next topic. So this is the update on FEMA's implementation of the Endangered Species Act as it relates to National Flood Insurance Program in Oregon. Last month, FEMA sent out a pre-implementation compliance measures letter, calling it a PICM letter for short, which is kind of appropriate considering you have to make a choice. But so this is a new development that was unexpected. It's most likely in response to a lawsuit indicating that FEMA has taken too long to implement the compliance requirements for the Endangered Species Act and the flood hazard areas. So in an effort to demonstrate that they're moving forward on this project, there is this new thing, which is requiring each community in Oregon that falls into the implementation area to choose one of 3 options that are listed in this PICM letter. The 3 options are adopt and implement an interim model ordinance. So the last time we discussed the cooperating agency portion of this project, we talked about the draft model ordinance that we had been authorized to review and comment on. This is not the same ordinance. It's meant to be similar and get communities close to that final product. So this is if a community adopts this option, they would need to adopt the interim model ordinance, and then once the final ordinance is ready for adoption, they'd need to go back through that adoption process and adopt the final ordinance, or pick one of the other paths available for the final implementation. So those are the paths A through C. The pre-implementation compliance measures letter identifies 3 options. These are options 1, 2, and 3. So adopt and implement interim model ordinance is the first option. Second option is require permit by permit habitat assessment. So that would be prepared by a biologist. There's a habitat assessment guidance document that was released last week. The draft model ordinance was also released last week. And so for any project in the special flood hazard area, an applicant would need to hire a biologist to complete a habitat assessment of their project and the effects on the floodplain functions, turn that into the jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction would review and approve or deny that. The third option is to prohibit all development in mapped special flood hazard areas until the final implementation requirements are put in place. The expectation identified in the letter is that that decision will be conveyed from local communities to FEMA by December 1st of this year, and that communities will begin reporting their decisions with relation to those key floodplain functions and the effects of development in their floodplains beginning January 31st of 2025. If a community doesn't respond with a choice, the expectation is that communities will, by default, be using the permit by permit habitat assessment option. Failure to implement the interim procedures The information that's been provided says that FEMA will begin with a conversation with the community, find out what's going on. If the community still does not implement the interim measures in the way that's deemed appropriate, then a community assistance visit, which is basically an audit of a floodplain program, would be opened for that community between FEMA and the community. I'll be presenting more information on this at the quarterly floodplain program update. That's currently scheduled for September 17th. It's kind of an evolving topic. FEMA has done 3 informational outreach sessions for local communities, and they've got another one coming up tomorrow afternoon. So, lots of questions.
Okay, so you all are not close to choosing an option at this point in time, it doesn't sound like, and that will be the subject of a future conversation.
Yes.
And has FEMA given any indication for their timeline for the regulatory process, and when we might expect a final?
The current goal is to
model,
have
Greg?
communities implementing the final requirements by 26 to 27. So that's probably
Okay.
like 2027.
Glacially slow. Okay, so that is a chunk of time. It makes sense to have something in the place in the interim.
Yeah, it can. The idea of interim measures was looked at several years ago. And that was the initial plan, but there was a fair amount of community pushback from communities who were concerned about having to go through program changes twice, a temporary program change and then a final program change. And so in response to that, FEMA got a 3-year extension to develop the final and just skip that interim measure. We're beyond the 3-year time period. And so that's, I think, where the lawsuit is coming from and why we've got this sudden new development.
It's understandable. Yeah. I know that there's been a delaying game going on too, so yeah. Okay. I look forward to hearing what staff recommendations are moving forward. It is a complex matter, and I think one of the things that I would love to know more about is the costs and benefits of choosing one route or the other, both in terms of our own staff time and in terms of community members, just how much area we have in special flood hazard zone, how much potential building demand there is there, and what might it cost landowners if we did the assessment parcel by parcel route, or the application by application. We are fortunate to have OSU in our backyard, and probably a fleet of recent graduates that can provide that kind of assessment, but not all areas are. It creates a whole new market for work.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else you want to share at this time?
No, not at this time. I think we covered enough for today.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Much appreciated. I hope that FEMA will come out with some more graphic materials too, so that you can explain some of it in visuals, because I think that'll help community members understand better too.
Yeah, there was an increase in the policy guidance document, but yes, they're always looking for new ways.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Next item is our consent calendar, which contains a winery permit for Willamette Cider Works, and approval of 2 sets of minutes, June 4th and June 18th board meeting minutes.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Consent calendar is approved. Next item is external fleet program and presentation of the 23-25 budget report from Gary Stockoff.
Gary, can you just do us a favor and turn some of the mics off? Yeah. Thank you.
Turn the one off. Yes, it'll be. Good morning, Commissioners. I am going to be deferring this to Mr. Krager, and he'll run through the presentation. I will just up front just say how grateful I am for all of you.
Once again, I think someone in the online community, or is it?
No, it's his laptop.
Okay, the laptop is now off. Okay, thank you.
For your patience as we've navigated through this and the last really 7 years. This process started when the previous fleet manager retired. Keith came on. A lot of heavy lifting was done in his time, and Devin's here now and kind of carrying on. But part of that has always been the budget and how to address those issues. And again, with Rick and Mary Lee and Debbie and everybody, I think we've got a pretty good plan going forward. And Rick will go over that today. And you'll see, I think, that moving forward at the start of the next fiscal year, or next biennium, I should say, that hopefully it will be where we can sustain the program and move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Krager, who is ready to roll.
Good morning, Commissioners. I apologize, little, yeah, Van's not gonna let me live this one down. So thank you for allowing us to be here today. And again, this is long overdue. As you recall, just as a bit of a background, our external fleet program has been something of a conversation for the last couple budget periods. And as part of that, there was a budget note, as you well know, put in last October. We did come before you and provide you a little bit of a piece of information at that time. As Gary alluded to, there's been a lot of changes in the external fleet program, losing our fleet manager in January, but we're now back to that place of really getting focused. And I think what we have for you here today is a plan as we start to go forward for your consideration and discussion. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of background in terms of, again, just to make sure that everybody remembers the history around this, that essentially the county has administered both external and internal fleet programs. And I think as most of you know, our internal fleet is paid through an assessment that we do each and every year. That is part of our budget, or is baked into our biennial budget, I should say, and is a fixed rate. Essentially, the dollars are going to be there regardless of the expenses, whereas the external fleet is very dependent on the actual billing that we do. And clearly that has not balanced over the years. I think one of the things that we have seen with the program is that in the past, it was all divided into one fund, as we call it. So it was all into a internal service fund, as we know in the accounting world. And primarily, there was really no separation, no ability to really peel out exactly what was the true cost. That changed back in 2019, 20, where again, for whatever reason, there was a discussion about how to separate internal service fund versus the enterprise fund. We were then able to start accounting for that external cost more. Of course, then COVID hit. That was certainly a challenge that we had as we move forward, as well as we wanted to try to get a little bit better accounting in relation to that. So we did acquire a new system to help us to better account for it. But again, I just wanted to kind of give you that background that's kind of where we had started from. So essentially, during the COVID period, we lost approximately $465,000. You all probably remember that. We used the American Rescue Plan Act dollars to balance that. Again, much of that, and as Gary has talked to this board in the past, We saw a lot of staffing challenges, obviously, time off. There was a lot less business during that time, so we essentially had to weather that storm. Again, as I kind of jumped ahead in 21-23 is when we implemented the Mercury model. Our previous county administrator worked with Gary, and we really wanted to get some more cost information around what was actually happening. And so, so we had that tool, and then as we moved into the 21-23 biennium, though, we still saw imbalance. And that's what I had talked to you back last October. We ended up with nearly a $600,000 deficit in the program for 21-23, which is still a deficit and still needs to be addressed, but that will be part of our discussion today. So as I mentioned, we met with you in October to provide you a staff report. At the time, I was doing an estimate. We were looking, if trends continued, about a $650,000 deficit just for 23-25. So do the math in terms of the previous biennium, we were going to be upwards close to 1.2 million if things continued the way they were, which was we needed to go to work. So here's what we've done. So first of all, every year we do a analysis of the private sector to see where things fit. I think we have been looking at this again for years, and maybe there was a bit of a timing issue around that. What we realized was that right now the market, or based on our most current information, is around $183 per hour. That's average amongst all of the different types of businesses around the community in the local area. We're at 143. So we're approximately $40, or we're approximately $40 below. As also in January 2024, we lost the fleet manager. And we also had struggled with our mechanics in terms of getting folks actually, you know, as they say, wrench turners that are actually able to get billing out and be able to complete the work that's necessary. So Gary worked very hard, I know, over the last 6 months to get a new fleet manager. We're all very pleased and happy with Devin, who is now on board. He's also worked hard with the mechanics. I'm happy to say we're 100% staffed. I'm sure he's happy about that as well. So I think that's another element that has gone into the work over the last 6 months. We also discovered, as you know, and I give Marilee credit in the back, as we started to look into some of the detail on how things get split. You often hear us talk about the splits between internal and external. We recognized that there was a error that was occurring, and I'm not going to get too much into the weeds, but essentially it was some of the expenses that we're seeing had already been split through some dedicated costing by the program to say a portion goes to internal, a portion goes to external. Then it got split again. So Marilee worked really hard through this last fiscal year to make that adjustment, and that did have an impact in relation to how much cost was going to the external. The other piece, and this was kind of the balance that Gary and I had worked to play, is back to the market. Clearly, we're well below the market. But at the same time, we have to remember, what is the external program about? It's really helping our local partners, particularly the small ones who don't have the big budgets to be able to pay for some of these services. So part of this is our community effort to really help those local organizations. If we were to raise to 183 from 143, that would be a pretty drastic increase, particularly when you talk about local jurisdictions that already have a baked-in budget for the year. So whatever we did, we needed to make sure we're in alignment and close communication with all those local jurisdictions moving forward. At the same time, we have a deficit, and how do we, try to make some move towards that? We did, in consulting with Gary and talking to a variety of folks, we came up with a 7% increase up to $153 per hour. So that was, and I should note, that's not for all of the partners. The city of Corvallis will still be at 143, and that's primarily contractually. It was signed and negotiated for a 2-year as opposed to a 1 year. So that one we were locked in, but again, that is a pretty substantial portion, but we do believe with the rest of our customers that will make a difference. So here's where we stand after for 23-25. So now I'm going to get a little bit into the numbers. What we're estimating for a deficit as of right now, or I should say as the end of the fiscal year, June 2024, is right about $205,000. So that's what we're seeing at this point. The actions that I just spoke about, so going back again to, remember in October, 650, the actions that have been taken, we're estimating it's about a 44% savings. So we've been able to kind of reduce what that, what I projected that deficit would be. So then when you put it all together in terms of kind of where we stand from a fiscal impact, remember we did put a $150,000 reserve into the budget to be able to protect against this. We knew that there would have to be changes. That would leave us with about a $215,000 deficit for the biennium. So again, that's how much, if everything goes the way, as planned. Obviously, things could always change. If all of a sudden we were to lose all of our staff, I mean, that certainly would be a bigger challenge to overcome. But that's where we think we would be by the end of the biennium. Again, the current estimates do not account for the impact of full staffing. So we think that this is a conservative estimate that potentially we could do better. Marilee, if she was here, and hopefully she'll nod her head when I say this. Oh, she's right behind me. So hopefully she'll nod her head when I say this, is that we don't know really what the impact of full staffing will be, but based on what we're seeing, it has a very positive impact. And that's why I felt comfortable with not including anything for that and being able to just project it on the basis of the actions that we talked about. So again, we're going to have to watch this closely, which will bring me, first of all, to kind of the final fiscal impact in relation to all of this. So again, I know that there was some questions in terms of the numbers. Some of these numbers sound somewhat close together. What I'm trying to illustrate here is now I'm looking at everything. So we've got a 21-23 that we know is already done. That has to be balanced. We have a 23-25 that we are estimating, again, that the 365 less the $150,000 reserve, that's the 215 I spoke of earlier. But this is putting it all together for you. This is what I think the impact, and what's most important, is on the general fund. Now, there's a piece here that I've added. You'll see less insurance savings. The reason that I've added this is because we, again, I don't want to get into too much detail, but we had workers' comp funds in the past that basically have gotten to their useful life. And once they're done, if there's any savings of that, that reverts to the general fund. We had savings. And so I'm trying to demonstrate to you that while it is ultimately an $810,000 deficit, that to the general fund after you account for the reserves, roughly would be $210,000 to the general fund. That makes me feel a lot better. It's certainly, I don't ever want to lose any of our discretionary general fund, but that's a lot less of an impact than I think we were thinking about at one point in time. So here's ultimately the recommendations that I've made to you today, or that we are making to you today. First, again, recognition, we're not solving the entire problem here today. We still believe that there will be a deficit for this biennium. We've mitigated some of that. We think that we will do better than the conservative estimate, but we haven't solved it. And that's where I get to the first bullet point and really being transparent with our partners. It's likely by next July, we will be at $200 per hour in the market. And that's the price that you will have to pay, basically will have to be paid to make us balance the budget. That's reality. And again, that's where the market is, 183, take 10% inflation. That's probably high, but still, you take that kind of increase, it's likely we're looking at $200 per hour. We'll know more as we move along, but what Gary and I would recommend is if you accept this, within 30 days, we need to put everybody on notice that this is going to be a change that gives people plenty of time to think about what they need to be either build into their budget to pay for that or examine alternatives. And again, there are alternatives out there, but at the same time, are they able to respond to the needs in the timely manner?
I would say, commissioners, when we did the bump in July to 153, I sent a letter to all of our customers letting them know it was going to 153 and that in the fall we would come back and have a rate that would be fairly significant and an increase. I had a separate letter go to Corvallis letting them know that we were honoring the 143, but in the fall you're going to get what Rick is saying here. I think the idea there is giving all of our folks plenty of time to get it in their budget process and stay with us or go look for another opportunity. From the letter that I sent out this last July, I don't think we received any comments back really from anybody. So, but again, Corvallis is aware of that because we do stay in contact with them quite a bit because there's still a lot of business that runs through us for the city of Corvallis. So we've tried to keep them in the loop right up front.
The second part of the recommendation to you today is, again, I'll go back to this just previous. You see that little $810,000, just so you know where this number is coming from. So I'm recommending that the board approve a general fund transfer of $811,000 to be able to cover the total deficit that you had seen on the previous page. Again, impact-wise, after you take the insurances, you can see 210. Commissioners, this is my hope and gift for the next CFO. I have been dealing with this particular issue since arriving here in the county, and what I hope to do is be able to take action through your budget that basically brings this program to the place where we're not constantly looking backwards, and that we can focus on going forward in terms of, one, being able to put this into a balanced budget, number one, and two, with a strong plan that will bring us to financial sustainability as we move into July 1. I don't want to see your next CFO have to deal with this on a constant looking backwards basis because it is always a bit of a challenge to be able to identify the resources going forward. So what I will say on that, though, is the 811, remember, it includes 365 that we are estimating for this particular biennium. So I would recommend that finance make the transfer from the previous biennium, but let's wait, see how we do. Which brings me to the third piece. I would recommend that you have quarterly reports coming from both Public Works and Financial Services that give you quarterly updates on seeing if we're staying on track. Again, fingers crossed, I'd like to see us do better. I think we could do better. But again, I think we need to watch this closely just in case something doesn't go the way that we had planned. And then lastly, this would, of course, fall into your budget supplement. I know another budget supplement will be around the corner. So this would all be codified essentially in that. But I guess I'm asking for you to approve that action, which kind of lays out the framework for that approval process. So again, commissioners, I know I started a little bit rough here this morning, jumping around in too many different things. So I hope that came across clear, but happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick. Could you just go over again why the recommendation to transfer up to $111,000 when we're estimating or hoping that it's only going to be 209 and some change?
Yeah, no, great question. So if you look at this slide here, Commissioner Wise, you see it goes through what our deficit was for 21-23, which is 595. What I'm saying is for the estimated deficit for 23-25 is 365, correct? And then, so that brings us to the nearly $1 million. You take away the reserve that we posted, and that gets us to the 811 that I had mentioned. So that's essentially what your deficit is. What I'm trying to demonstrate here is there is an unplanned revenue source that came to the general fund that wasn't built into the budget, and that's the insurance savings. So I guess what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is that while yes, it's an $811 general fund transfer, there was also 601 unanticipated revenues that came to the general fund. So fiscal impact wise, you don't have as big a impact to the general fund.
So would it be fair to say that we would be approving up to $111,000, 601,000 of which was the insurance savings from the
You said 111, you mean 811?
811.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
Thousand.
Say that one more time then, Commissioner Wise.
Sure. Would it be fair to say that we would be approving up to an $811,000 transfer, 601,000 of which would be insurance savings from the general fund?
I'm fine with you saying it that way.
Just thank you for my own clarification. And
no.
Yeah. And then I guess I have another question or two. When it comes to the impacts or the consequences of us moving forward, or maybe in the future discontinuing an external fleet services, could you speak to the pros and cons? I mean, impacts not being able to service smaller jurisdictions. Would there be an impact to staff retention, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, so first, I guess my answer would be I always try to look things from an optimistic standpoint in terms of if we begin to move this plan in place, again, to get this program charging what the cost is. I think that there is a place where this can be a continued program and break even and provide the good services that our local jurisdictions need. Now, the wild card, of course, in that is if you raise to that level, what happens? Does the customer stay? And I think time will tell on that. Now, let's assume worst case scenario that they don't. And then I do think we have to have conversations, of course, about how do we reduce the cost to be back in balance. Impact wise, I mean, again, this has been a program that has served a lot of your small local jurisdictions that don't have a lot of other options. I think that certainly it's going to have an impact on their budgets regardless if this program is here or not, because like I said, the private sector that's what you're going to pay there. But it certainly will have an impact on them. I think they've enjoyed the quick turnaround services provided by our fleet staff, and so that could be a barrier and challenge for them. In terms of staffing components, I think, Gary, again, these are, of course, worst case, not where I want to go, but certainly if we have to come to that, I think Gary has thought a little bit about how through attrition and through opportunities and looking at this. And that's why these quarterly reports are going to be important. If we are trending in a negative, we might be able to take opportunities maybe not to fill a particular position that comes vacant. So I think, again, we will know more after we make that communication to our partners. We start hearing from them, and then you start seeing the quarterly report, and then we'll probably get deeper into that.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason I ask is just, we've heard from some constituents who are concerned, they hear, oh, you guys are losing money. And so I guess I'm trying to make the case, the argument of why we, make it clear of the reasons why we should continue down the path of still losing money, with the goal of getting to not losing money, trying to make the case that there are still positive impacts for that, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Wise. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, one option could be, all right, well, we just stop the program right now. That would not, again, then you would be asking local jurisdictions to have to find services and not have an opportunity to adjust their own budgets to be able to afford these. So again, that's where we're trying to be very thoughtful of folks to say, okay, let's do a modest increase, be able to mitigate some of this. However, we need to just, again, give them that opportunity to be able to make any course corrections that they may need.
I would also say, Commissioner, that the path forward is really bringing us into line with what others in the community charge. And probably for decades, I will say, we haven't even been close to that. And so again, this last 6-7 years has been a process of kind of bringing us out of where we were at before to now here we're at in the real world. And, you know, we've gone down and we do these annual surveys, and you know, $189 to $200 an hour is right where everybody else is at for the services that we provide. Or if we had to go out and get them ourselves, we would be paying that then. But back to Rick's comment, as we go along and we do these quarterly updates, and fingers crossed that everything goes well and that we'll be breaking even, because that is the goal, is to break even. But if something happens and it looks like we need to adjust, obviously then we look at services, we look at our own internal fleet and how many techs are needed there, and then we would be back and trying to stay ahead of that curve. We've been very reactionary, for, like Rick says, he inherited that when he got here. So I think we're to a point where we can be proactive, and hopefully we won't be back here with this same dilemma as we get ready into the next biennium.
And then another question, I know you guys have done a lot of work into trying to make this work. Have you tried to look at like a sliding scale, or, I'm not even sure how that would work, but, or like grant funding that other jurisdictions could try to apply for? I don't know.
I think those are all options that we'll want to look at as we consider this. I'm saying it has to be $200 an hour. Maybe that is, like you said, and perhaps it's a sliding scale, depending on the types of services, things like that. We haven't gotten into that detail. We just know on average, that's what we think we will have to charge. As we progress in this next budget process, that's the kind of work that we'll need to do to figure out what is that rate, how's it going to land? Is it just going to be a flat 200? Is it going to be 200? Or is there other options? So I think that's completely on the table. I do want to just make one quick comment to what Gary said about decades. And I don't want to leave the impression with any of you that anybody had done anything wrong up to the point. Again, back to the background, we didn't know. This was all embedded together, internal and external. So I don't want there to be the thought that, okay, we've been going on this with decades. Gary's right. It's likely that was the case, but we could have never seen it because it was all combined into one fund. It wasn't until Mary Otley and her leadership really kind of put that on the table in 2019, I believe, when we had separation. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any thought that this was something that nobody noticed for a long time.
Thank you. And I guess my last question, which is related but unrelated, the internal service charge, will that stay the same or be similar?
Right now, the internal service charge is flat fixed for this biennium. Obviously, it could change for 25, 27, but we haven't gotten to that calculation yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I appreciate the effort to get us to this point, and I agree with what Rick just said. A few years ago, it was kind of a black box, and going along okay, because we didn't know what our actual costs were and how to fairly distribute. Obviously the 601,000 from workers' comp is a one-time event. Yep. Does that change anything going forward? Is that embedded in calculations, or it's
Commissioner Malone,
It's a
you're
nice, clean transaction, one time.
yeah. And again, I know I made it probably more complicated than it needed to be because we're moving it to the general fund, but I think Commissioner Wise said it. It's essentially a one-time savings. Thank goodness, and we're able to use that to mitigate the budgeted general fund that would have been hit. But yeah, it won't mess up anything in terms of going forward.
And a couple comments. It seems like previously we've been sluggish responding or updating our rates, and I hope that we can pick up the pace so we can keep current with multi-year contracts. It seems like there should be some CPI or some kind of factor in there, because may have been accurate when you started, and by the time 2 years go by, you're either behind or way behind. And
You're correct, Commissioner. And actually, the only one that we have a service level agreement right now is Corvallis, and that ends at the end of next June. And then we would revisit how we want to use those and if we need to modify those, but they're really the only ones that have one. The other thing that we have done and will implement is annual increases to the rate as opposed to a 2-year rate, because we found ourselves always battling uphill to hold out for 2 years. And then it was usually a bigger increase to catch up. And that was hard for a lot of the folks to take. So we've already made those kind of adjustments as we were going forward.
And how often do you do comparables to?
Usually we do that in January.
Okay.
Yeah, every January we look at the rates.
Well, I'm grateful for the analysis that you've done. This really is an area where Benton County has subsidized many other municipalities, many of them small, often with their fire engine maintenance and other critical emergency response vehicles. So I'm glad we've been able to do it. But we have to not do it at the expense of our own county taxpayers moving forward. So I hope this is the last time we see this situation. I am also very grateful for the timing of this particular action or proposed action and getting it in sync with budget processes so that other municipalities can actually factor in any potential rate increases. I think that's been our other blind spot in the past, is just kind of not being in sync with decision-making processes that our clients are facing. So that's great. Let's keep it up and make sure that we can keep functioning and keep our great team together to serve the community and ourselves.
I'm happy to make a motion and take a stab at a slightly modified motion. I move to approve the transfer of $811,000, including over $601,000 of insurance savings of general fund in the 2023-25 budget to offset the past and forecasted deficit of the external fleet program. This action will be codified in the next supplement budget.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Reluctantly.
Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Look forward to the next report. We have one more item that Gary is staying at the table for, and that is the giving formal approval for the electric vehicle charging stations grant proposal, and with a little bit more detail than we had the other day when it was initially discussed.
Yes, Commissioner. So we discussed this last week, and this is just the formalization of being able to move forward and apply for the CFI, Charging Fueling Infrastructure grant program that's out through the Federal Highway Administration. Right now, we're targeting up to 6 charging station locations and trying to narrow those down. Budget-wise, we're looking at $500,000 to $700,000 to do that, depending on what sites are chosen. I have reached out to Monroe, and I think Mr. Martinico is chatting with his council on Monday. So he felt library was a good site. He also suggested the city park. So depending on what the council likes, then we can move forward with identifying that one. I am working on the application now. It's a mind melter, to say the least, but we're plugging away, and thankful to Jeremy and the folks in the grants group and finance to help me. So if there's any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Yeah, there is a match that we have to come up with.
20%, correct.
20%.
20%.
Okay. And we're in good shape to be able to do that?
Yes.
That was the right answer.
We chat a little bit about it. I think that you'll see that as a CIP request for the next biennium. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, I see the minimum grant amount was $500,000. Is that what we would be looking for, or it's just whatever they decide to allocate
500,000
to?
is the floor, the minimum. If we wanted to do all this, the ones that we talked about, it'd probably be 700,000, which moves our match up to like 140,000, if I remember right, if I'm doing the math.
Okay.
That would then be able to do, I think, 6 stations.
Okay, thank you.
So ask for the big number, and then we can scale it when they ask us to, if it's
Correct.
scalable.
That is correct, Commissioner. They ask if they're scalable, and this one definitely is scalable.
Okay.
Well, I'll move to authorize staff to submit an application for a charging and fueling infrastructure program grant.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Get to work, Gary.
Okay. Is there any other business for the regular board meeting today? Are there any announcements? Hearing none, we will recess our regular session, and we will enter into executive session under ORS 192.6602D regarding labor negotiations, and we will be taking a 5-minute break.